Something is buried beneath our world, hidden not just by time, but by distance. Across continents and deserts, on mountain tops and ocean floors, archaeologists keep uncovering artifacts and structures that don't fit neatly into the story we think we know. Objects engineered with impossible precision, ruins aligned to celestial patterns no ancient tools should have been able to measure, entire cities that appear, flourish, and vanish without a trace of the people who built them. Each discovery raises the same unsettling question: how much of human history is still missing? Tonight, we're not chasing legends. We're examining the evidence that refuses to be explained, the puzzles that science acknowledges but cannot yet solve. So settle in, look closer, and keep an open mind. Because what we're about to explore might reshape the way you see the past and the world beneath your feet. High in the remote wilderness of Siberia's region, where endless forests press against ancient mountains, there lies a formation that has puzzled scientists for decades. Locals call it the Kulpikov Cone, but to the outside world, it became known as the PM Sky Crater, a towering ring of shattered limestone rising from the taiga, like the fossilized remains of something long forgotten. From above, it resembles a gigantic ash-gay mound with a hollow center, as if the Earth itself once breathed out a violent exhalation and then froze in the moment. Discovered in '49 by geologist Vadim Kulpikov, the structure immediately defied classification. It wasn't shaped like the impact craters typically left by meteorites. It wasn't volcanic. There were no traces of lava, ash, or volcanic glass, and no known human activity could explain its scale. Nearly 80 meters tall, more than 150 meters across, and composed of millions of tons of rock seemingly displaced from below, it stood alone, untouched, surrounded by dense forest that had known almost no human footprints. In the early years, the mystery deepened as investigators noted an unusual detail. The trees around the formation showed signs of accelerated growth, as if something beneath the ground had once radiated heat or energy. What kind of event could cause such a pattern? A massive subterranean gas explosion, the collapse of an ancient cavern, or something far more unusual? Mainstream geological theories soon emerged. Some researchers suggested the crater might be the result of a phreatic explosion. Superheated groundwater suddenly turns to steam deep underground, forcing rock upward in a violent eruption. Others proposed the slow rise of a cryptocanic structure, a dome created by internal pressures rather than molten material. These explanations were logical, grounded in known processes, yet none matched every observable feature. No volcanic minerals, no clear venting patterns, no consistent distribution of debris. In the absence of a definitive answer, curiosity widened into speculation. Could the formation have been triggered by the impact or near impact of a meteorite similar to the Tunguska event of 1908? Some researchers explored this possibility, noting that the Pomsky structure sits within a region marked by unexplained seismic and atmospheric anomalies. But again, the evidence refused to align perfectly. If a meteorite struck here, why was the crater cone made of uplifted earth rather than compressed impact material? And where was the meteoric residue? More unconventional ideas followed. Some fringe theorists proposed that the crater might be the remnant of a buried iron mass, perhaps even a long-cooled fragment of a cometary nucleus. Others, inspired by the crater's oddly symmetrical structure and central depression, wondered whether it could be related to ancient geothermal activity still poorly understood. A few even speculated about artificial origins, pointing to the unusual geometry as possible evidence of a collapsed unknown installation. None of these theories prevailed, but they were never fully dismissed either. The data simply remained incomplete. Even decades later, scientific expeditions continued to encounter challenges. The region is remote, harsh, and often inaccessible. Some expeditions reported compass interference. Others described unexplained fluctuations in radiation levels, brief, inconsistent, not harmful, but puzzling. Each attempt to explain the crater seemed to raise new questions. Why does the structure appear younger than the surrounding forest? What forces could have shaped such a massive cone with such precision? And why does the crater continue to shift ever so slightly over time, as if still settling from an event we cannot reconstruct? Today, the Piemsky crater stands as one of Siberia's most enduring geological enigmas. Its slopes remain silent, its origins unresolved. Scientists continue to study it, hikers continue to be drawn to it, and the forest continues to grow slowly around it. Waiting. Perhaps the answer lies buried beneath the limestone layers. Or perhaps the crater is a reminder that even in an age of satellites, sensors, and global mapping, some mysteries still resist our explanations, inviting us to wonder what else remains hidden in the vastness of the Earth. In the upper Amazon basin of northern Peru, where thick green canopies roll over the foothills like waves of living shadow, lies an archaeological site that has quietly challenged our understanding of early South American civilizations. It is known as the Monte Grande Spiral Temple, a monumental earthen structure shaped not in straight lines or sharp angles, but in a vast ascending spiral that coils toward the sky. At first glance, Monte Grande feels deceptively simple, a mound of earth, stone and clay nestled along the Maya River. But as the morning sun cuts through the mist, its form becomes unmistakable. A ramp spirals upward around the exterior, guiding visitors, ancient or modern, toward a central chamber at the summit. Its architecture is unlike anything else from the region or the era. Built nearly 3,000 years ago, long before the rise of the Inca, the structure suggests a level of organization, planning and symbolic purpose that early jungle communities were not previously believed to possess. Archaeologists uncovered remnants of offerings inside the temple, fruits, seeds, and carefully arranged artifacts hinting at ritual activity. But whose rituals were these, and what did the spiral signify? Was it a path of ascent, a representation of water, a symbol of rebirth, or something more astronomical? Mainstream theories point towards ceremonial use. The spiral ramp could have guided processions upward during seasonal rituals, perhaps connected to agricultural cycles or the movement of the surrounding rivers. Some researchers have noted that spirals frequently appear in ancient cultures as metaphors for life continuity or spiritual journeys. In this sense, Monte Grande may have served as a community's central gathering point, a physical expression of shared belief. Yet not all features fit neatly within conventional explanations. The sheer size of the temple is unusual for the region, especially for communities thought to be small and relatively dispersed. The precision of its form, the smoothness of the ramp, the consistent curvature, the elevated platform at the top suggests significant knowledge of engineering and coordinated labour. How did a pre-ceramic Amazonian society assemble such a structure? And why do we see so few similar sites nearby? Some researchers suggest that Monte Grande may have been part of a broader, now lost tradition of monumental building in the upper Amazon, one erased by erosion, flooding, or later human activity. Others propose that its unique design may have been influenced by distant cultures through ancient trade routes. Could ideas have travelled across the Andes or up from coastal civilizations, leaving subtle marks on the architecture? More speculative theories consider the temple's geometry itself. Spirals, some argue, might reflect astronomical observations, patterns in the night sky, solar cycles, or even the movement of certain stars. If Monte Grande served as a calendar or observatory, what celestial events might its creators have been tracking? And why choose a spiral instead of the linear alignment seen at other ancient sites? A few fringe interpretations go further, suggesting that the spiral form could indicate a deeper symbolic system, perhaps a cosmology in which the temple represented a journey from the earthly world toward a higher plane. Others have wondered whether the structure's placement near fault lines or unusual geomagnetic areas might hold clues to its purpose. These theories remain unproven, but the questions they raise continue to deepen the site's aura of quiet mystery. Today, the Monte Grande Spiral Temple stands partially reclaimed by the jungle, its winding path softened by centuries of rain and soil. Yet even in its weathered state, it evokes a sense of intention, a message carved into the earth by hands that understand something we do not. And as researchers map its contours and uncover its secrets piece by piece, one question lingers. What compelled an ancient Amazonian community to build a perfect spiral in the heart of the forest? And what knowledge might still lie hidden beneath its layers of earth and time? Continuing our journey from the spiraling mysteries of Peru, we turn now to a far older and more intimate enigma, one that is written not in stone or earthworks, but in the fragile bones of those who lived millennia ago. Here the story is not of grand monuments or isolated craters, but of people, conflict, and the shadows of an ancient violence we can scarcely imagine. Along the banks of the Nile in what is now northern Sudan lies a site that has silently guarded its secrets for over 13,000 years. Jebel Sahaba, a cemetery of the prehistoric Nile Valley, is unassuming at first glance. Scattered skeletal remains buried in sandy soil, lying as they were left by the communities that once thrived along these now dry river channels. Yet for anthropologists and archaeologists, the bones tell a story that is both compelling and deeply unsettling. Upon careful examination, the remains reveal something extraordinary. Many skeletons bear projectile wounds, stone points embedded in ribs, vertebrae and skulls, healed over in some cases, fatal in others. Unlike isolated accidents or hunting injuries, the patterns of trauma suggest repeated, deliberate acts of violence. Some individuals carry multiple wounds. Some show evidence of slow, lingering deaths. Others display signs of defensive injuries, arms broken as if raised to shield against attack. In total, over 60% of the remains show evidence of interpersonal violence, a stark contrast to what would be expected in small, dispersed hunter-gatherer communities. The site itself raises questions. Jebel Sahaba existed at the tail end of the last ice age, a period of environmental upheaval in the region. Rivers shifted, rainfall patterns changed, and habitable land contracted. Could this climate stress have driven competition for scarce resources, sparking conflicts between neighbouring groups? Anthropologists often point to ecological pressures as a plausible explanation, suggesting that Jebel Sahaba represents one of the earliest known cases of organised intergroup violence, a prehistoric glimpse into the origins of war. Yet as we study the bones more closely, additional mysteries emerge. Why were some individuals buried carefully with grave goods, while others were left in shallow pits almost discarded? Why are certain clusters of skeletons densely packed, as if they fell in waves while others lie isolated? And why does the archaeological record show no clear evidence of settlements large enough to explain the scale of repeated conflict? Could there have been movements of people or transient groups we will never fully trace? The injuries themselves are telling but puzzling. The stone projectiles vary in size and shape, some too small to have caused fatal wounds alone, others blunt or fragmented, leaving marks that suggest a terrifyingly intimate knowledge of the human body. Could these differences indicate different groups, different weapons, or even varying levels of skill? And if so, what does this imply about the social structures of these communities? Was there a hierarchy of warriors? Did certain individuals hold specialized roles as protectors or aggressors? Some researchers propose more speculative interpretations. Could Jebel Sahaba be evidence of early ritualized conflict where violence was both a survival mechanism and a socially codified practice? Others wonder whether these wounds might indicate early forms of raiding or proto-warfare between communities not yet large enough to leave permanent structures, leaving only the silent testimony of their dead behind. A few fringe theories suggest even stranger possibilities, hinting at intergroup dynamics or cultural practices that modern anthropology has yet to grasp fully. While these ideas remain unproven, they reflect the depth of mystery the site continues to evoke. As we trace the arcs of stone points through bone, the story of Jebel Sahaba becomes a meditation on human resilience and fragility. The skeletal remains are more than evidence. They are voices across the millennia, bearing witness to fear, struggle, and the constant negotiation between survival and mortality. They remind us that violence is not merely a modern phenomenon, but a thread woven deep into human history intertwined with climate, culture, and circumstance. And yet many questions remain unanswered. How did these communities organize themselves socially, politically, and economically? How widespread was this early violence beyond the cemetery's borders? What factors triggered the cycles of conflict? And why did they eventually dissipate or transform into forms we do recognize in later civilizations? Each bone, each mark, each grave gestures toward a past, both known and unknowable, a past that refuses to be neatly explained. Jebel Sahaba forces us to confront the shadows of humanity's earliest struggles, asking us to consider not just the mechanics of ancient violence, but the larger enduring questions about who we were, how we survived, and how the capacity for conflict has shaped the human story. And as we leave the Nile Valley, moving from the echo of stone-tipped arrows to the enigmatic rise of civilizations, we carry with us the haunting, unanswerable question: what other chapters of human history lie buried, waiting to be uncovered, where the evidence speaks in silence, leaving only the questions for us to ponder? Seamlessly moving from the haunting traces of early human conflict at Jebel Sahaba, we now turn northward across continents and centuries to a site of extraordinary craftsmanship and enigmatic symbolism. a reminder that the mysteries of the past are not confined to any single culture, climate, or era. Where bones once told stories of life and death, now we encounter artifacts that whisper of beliefs, trade, and connections far beyond their immediate surroundings. Among these, one object stands out, quietly defying explanation: the Osenberg Buddha bucket. Buried within the rich peat-laden soil of the Osenberg ship burial in Norway, this small, intricately carved container is at first glance unremarkable. A wooden bucket seemingly utilitarian, weathered by centuries of burial beneath the weight of earth and moss. Yet those who study it quickly notice something extraordinary. A figure unmistakably seated in a meditative posture, hands resting in the lap, face serene, carved in delicate relief along its sides. To the modern eye, it evokes the iconography of Buddha, though this is a vessel uncovered among the graves of two high-status Viking women dating to the early 9th century CE. The bucket was found alongside an array of objects in one of the most lavish Viking burials ever discovered: ornately decorated sledges, carved animal heads, textiles and everyday tools, all meticulously arranged within the timbered ship that had been interred in the mound. The Osenberg burial has been interpreted as a site of extraordinary social and ritual significance. Yet the presence of this figure, the Buddha form, raises questions that reach far beyond Scandinavia. How did a figure so closely resembling Eastern iconography appear in a context so distant in time and space? Mainstream explanations have often leaned toward the familiar. Some suggest the carving is coincidental, an abstract figure or symbolic motif common to Norse art whose serene posture may have resonated with local aesthetics rather than religious practice. Others argue that it reflects the Vikings' exposure to objects and motifs from the broader trade networks of the early medieval world. After all, Norse merchants travelled extensively, reaching not only the British Isles and the Mediterranean and so, but also stepping into the waterways of the east via rivers leading to the Caspian and beyond. Could a stylized Eastern figure have been brought westward, its meaning transformed and repurposed in a local context? Yet even these plausible theories leave gaps. The carving is detailed enough to suggest more than a simple decorative flourish. The figure's pose is intentional, serene and meditative, bearing a resemblance to iconography that would not have been common knowledge in Viking Scandinavia. How could such a precise depiction survive across thousands of kilometers and generations without distortion, arriving in a small wooden bucket buried in the frozen north? And why was it included among ritual objects intended for a burial, suggesting a spiritual or symbolic significance to its presence? Some researchers have explored more speculative possibilities. Could this represent a forgotten strand of contact between East and North carried not only by traders but by missionaries, travellers, or itinerant artisans? Might the figure reflect an unrecorded syncretism where neither spiritual understanding absorbed or reinterpreted foreign imagery in a way that left no written trace? Or is it possible, however unlikely, that the figure embodies knowledge or inspiration whose origins remain lost to history, hinting at connections we have yet to trace? Beyond its iconography, the Buddha bucket raises questions about ritual context and intent. Was the figure meant to protect, to guide, or to symbolize transcendence in the afterlife? The bucket itself, a utilitarian object transformed into a vessel of subtle, enigmatic meaning, suggests that everyday items could be imbued with profound significance. Its presence alongside textiles, combs, and ceremonial sledges reinforces the idea that the Osenberg burial was as much about identity and belief as it was about wealth or status. Could this indicate a worldview in which foreign or abstract ideas were absorbed, reinterpreted, and woven into local spiritual practices? There are also technical curiosities. The carving exhibits a precision and style that is unusual for contemporaneous Scandinavian woodwork. The smoothness of the lines, the symmetry of the figure, the serene facial expression all suggest a level of skill that challenges assumptions about what was possible in regional craftsmanship at the time. Who carved this bucket, and what knowledge or training did they possess? Were such objects commonplace and simply lost to history, or was this an exceptional artifact created for a rare elite context? As we reflect on the Osenberg Buddha bucket, its mystery deepens. It is a reminder that the past does not always present itself in neat, culturally bounded categories. A single carved figure can provoke questions about trade, migration, spirituality, and the flow of ideas across continents. And while scholars continue to debate its origins, functions, and symbolism, the bucket remains a silent witness buried for over a millennium, quietly bridging worlds we can only glimpse through careful study and imagination. In the end, the Buddha bucket resists a tidy explanation. It asks us to consider the permeability of cultural boundaries, the creativity of ancient artisans, and the ways in which objects can carry meaning across time and space. It is both ordinary and extraordinary, a simple vessel that through a single carved figure expands the scope of what we thought we knew about Viking Scandinavia and its place in a wider world. And as we leave the windswept mounds of Norway, one thought lingers. What other traces of unseen connections, forgotten knowledge, or extraordinary encounters lie hidden in the artifacts we pass by every day, waiting for someone to notice, to question, and to wonder? Flowing from the Osberg burial, where a small carved bucket hinted at far-reaching connections and lost knowledge, we now travel even further back in time to a city that flourished thousands of years before the Vikings set sail. Here in the scorched plains of eastern Iran, archaeologists uncovered an artifact that challenges our assumptions about the technological and medical sophistication of ancient societies. The Shahar-Sukht artificial eye nestled in the harsh, sun-baked plateau of Sistan, Shahar-Sukht, the burnt city, reveals layers of human ingenuity and tragedy dating to approximately 3200 BCE. CE. Excavations here have uncovered houses, workshops, cemeteries and canals, testifying to a thriving complex urban settlement long before many civilizations in the region had fully developed. Among the most arresting finds is the burial of a young woman, her skeleton carefully interred with grave goods that indicate both status and ritual significance. But it is her right eye that has captured the imagination of researchers around the world. The eye itself is astonishing in both precision and craftsmanship. Crafted from a mixture of bitumen, animal glue and cow bones, it is perfectly shaped to fit the eye socket, complete with intricate painted details to mimic the iris and scars. Measurements suggest that the prosthetic could have been worn comfortably, allowing some functional use. An X-ray analysis reveals grooves and sockets designed to accommodate lashings that would have secured it to the skull. In short, this is not simply symbolic art. It is a practical wearable device from a society long presumed to lack the technological and medical knowledge to create such an object. Mainstream interpretations focus on its role as an early prosthetic. Scholars suggest that the woman may have lost her eye due to injury, illness or infection, and that the artificial replacement allowed her to maintain appearance, social status, and perhaps even some degree of visual function. The craftsmanship indicates not only skill, but an understanding of anatomy and optics that seems astonishing for the time. Could artisans in share suit have been performing complex medical procedures with knowledge of prosthetics, infection control, and cosmetic restoration far earlier than previously thought? Yet the artifact raises as many questions as it answers. Why would such an elaborate prosthetic appear here in a city that otherwise leaves sparse evidence of medical specialization? Could this indicate that the burnt city had a tradition of trained artisans or physicians whose techniques have been lost entirely to history? And why do similar prosthetic devices appear only sporadically in the archaeological record, rather than as part of a broader well-documented practice? Some researchers have proposed that the eye's function may have extended beyond the practical. Could it have served as a symbol of protection or power, imbuing the wearer with spiritual significance in addition to physical restoration? In other words, was this prosthetic both functional and sacred, bridging the gap between technology and ritual? The integration of such an object into a burial suggests deliberate care, an acknowledgement of the individual's identity, and perhaps even a belief in continuity between life and death. More speculative interpretations push the boundaries further. The anatomical precision of the eye implies knowledge of the human body that may have included early understanding of sight, muscle movement, and perhaps even the psychological effects of appearance. Could Shah have harboured specialised medical knowledge that rivals or predates what we see in later civilizations such as Egypt or Mesopotamia? And if so, why has this knowledge disappeared entirely, leaving behind only the occasional enigmatic artifact like this artificial eye? The context of the discovery adds another layer of intrigue. The woman's burial included beads, pottery, and other ornaments indicating status. Yet the grave was not monumental. This suggests that the artificial eye was not merely a tool for the elite. It may have been valued for personal, practical, or ritual reasons that we do not yet understand, and yet no records, inscriptions, or complementary artifacts exist to explain the practice. We are left to reconstruct a lost story from a single remarkable object. The craftsmanship itself demands reflection. The smooth curvature of the eye, the delicate painting, the precision of attachment, each aspect implies experimentation, observation, and iterative improvement. The artisans of Shahari Suk had to understand not only materials but also anatomy, comfort, and aesthetics. For a society thousands of years old, isolated in a desert plain, this represents a level of sophistication that challenges our assumptions about the linear progression of medical technology. As we consider the Shahara Suk artificial eye, we are confronted with a profound sense of mystery. Here is an object that speaks to human ingenuity, empathy, and the desire to restore what was lost, a tangible connection across millennia. And yet, it is also a silent enigma hinting at skills, knowledge, and cultural practices that have vanished from history. What other innovations existed in Char that we may never find? How many stories of human creativity and resilience remain buried beneath layers of sand and time, waiting for discovery? In the end, the artificial eye is more than a prosthetic. It is a testament to a civilization's complexity, a symbol of human adaptability, and a challenge to our understanding of prehistoric technology. As we move forward in our exploration of archaeological mysteries, it leaves us with a lingering essential question. If such knowledge existed thousands of years ago, lost to the passage of time, what other extraordinary capabilities of ancient peoples are still waiting unseen beneath the earth? Flowing from the ingenuity and human empathy revealed in the shared artificial eye, we now turn to a site that shifts our focus from the practical and personal to the symbolic and communal. Here in the heart of the ancient Levant, we encounter expressions of humanity captured not in utility but in form. Figures that have silently endured millennia, gazing out from their plaster frames, inviting us to wonder what inspired their creation. These are the Ayn Ghazal plaster statues. Nestled on the outskirts of modern-day Amman, Jordan, the archaeological site of Ayn Ghazal reveals a Neolithic settlement that thrived between roughly 7200 and 5000 BCE. The landscape around it, fertile plains punctuated by small rivers, once supported a flourishing community of early farmers. Amid the remains of homes, granaries, and burial grounds, excavators unearthed something extraordinary. Life-size plaster statues fashioned from lime, reeds, and bumen, with hauntingly detailed faces and hollow eyes that seem to follow the observer even today. At first glance, these statues are striking for their realism and scale. Some are over 3 feet tall, their torsos fully formed, while others are partial figures or busts. Each has been carefully modelled, their faces individually rendered with subtle distinctions, slightly different expressions, nose shapes, and eye placements. Yet it is their eyes that captivate the imagination. Painted with dark men, they convey an intensity of gaze that seems to transcend time. For a community living in a world without writing, these figures communicate an immediacy, a presence that feels almost alive. Mainstream archaeological interpretations suggest that the statues served ritual or ceremonial purposes. Buried beneath house floors or in pits between dwellings, they may have represented ancestors, guardians, or deities embodying spiritual beliefs that reinforced communal identity. Some theorists propose that they were used in mortuary rituals, perhaps serving as vessels for the spirits of the dead or as protective figures for the living. The meticulous care in their construction implies that their creation was not a casual endeavour, but a deliberate, labour-intensive act invested with meaning. Yet many aspects of the statues remain deeply enigmatic. Why were some figures intentionally broken or buried shortly after creation? What determined which statues were preserved and which were destroyed? And why, in a world still developing agriculture and permanent settlements, did such abstract yet lie-like representations emerge here and not in other contemporary communities nearby? The techniques used to create the statues also spark intrigue. The artisans mixed lime plaster with straw and reeds to form the bodies, sculpting with remarkable precision despite the absence of metal tools. Facial features were modelled with an understanding of human anatomy that seemed sophisticated for the era. Some researchers have noted evidence of deliberate colour application, possibly to enhance realism or convey symbolic significance. How did these early sculptors develop such skill? Was this knowledge widespread within the community, or the domain of specialised individuals whose techniques vanished with time? Speculative interpretations extend the mystery further. Could the hollow eyes and individualized features indicate more than ritual or symbolic purpose? Some suggest that the statues served as proxies for absent community members, perhaps representing deceased or relocated individuals. Others propose that they may have functioned as teaching tools aiding in social or spiritual instruction, or even as early attempts to embody aspects of the human psyche in physical form. A few fringe theories, though controversial, entertain the possibility that these statues reflect an awareness of self and other, a proto-psychological or cognitive sophistication that challenges assumptions about Neolithic communities. The context of their discovery adds to the enigma. Unlike other prehistoric art, which is often portable or utilitarian, the Angazal statues were immovable, tied to specific locations within the settlement. Their placement within domestic and communal spaces suggests a deliberate integration into daily life, hinting at an intimate, continuous relationship between the living and the symbolic figures. Did families interact with these statues as they would with ancestors or spirits? Were they witnesses to daily routines, silent participants in the rhythms of early community life? Moreover, the scale and ambition of the statues raise broader questions about social organisation. Producing life-size plaster figures would have required significant planning, cooperation, and resource investment. Could this indicate that Archaeological was more than a simple farming village? That it harboured complex social structures, hierarchies, or religious leadership capable of directing labour and preserving specialised knowledge? And if so, why do we see so few comparable statues elsewhere from the same period? As we reflect on the Agazal plaster statues, one is struck by the way they embody both clarity and ambiguity. They are precise in form yet mysterious in purpose, communal in scale yet intimate in detail. They connect us to a people who lived more than 9 millennia ago, offering glimpses of their beliefs, fears, and aspirations, while simultaneously leaving vast gaps in our understanding. These statues compel us to ask, what motivated their creation? Were they bridges to the spiritual world, tools of social cohesion, or expressions of something entirely beyond our comprehension? How many other symbolic or ritual practices existed in the Neolithic world that have vanished without leaving a trace, their significance lost to time? In the end, the Angazal plaster statues endure as silent witnesses to human imagination, skill, and devotion. They are both artifact and enigma, tangible evidence of lives long past, and a reminder of the profound mysteries that still lie hidden in the soil beneath our feet. And as we leave the plains of the Levant, we are left to wonder what other glimpses of ancient human consciousness encoded in form, material, or gesture are waiting to be uncovered, and what will they reveal about the depth and complexity of our shared past? Flowing from the plastered faces of Ain Ghazal, which have silently gazed across millennia, we now shift our journey from the Levant to the lush volcanic landscapes of Southeast Asia, a land where nature and spirituality intertwine, and where human hands have left traces both monumental and enigmatic. Here, carved directly into the cliffs above terrace rice fields, lie the Gunung Kawi rock shrines of Bali, a site that blends artistry, ritual, and mystery in ways that continue to puzzle scholars and travellers alike. Nestled in a narrow river valley near Tampakiring, Bali, the Gunung Kawi complex rises from the jungle with an almost surreal elegance. Massive rock-cut shrines, some over 7 meters tall, are shunted directly into volcanic tuff cliffs, their forms precise, towering and austere. Approaching the site requires descending a long flight of steep stone steps, flanked by verdant rice terraces. The sound of the Pikarisen River below mingling with the rustle of the jungle, the sheer scale of the shrines combined with the natural surroundings, evokes a profound sense of reverence and awe. The shrines are believed to date to the 11th century CE during Bali's early kingdom period. Though precise records of their construction are scarce, each sanctuary is thought to be a tertiary monument carved to honour members of the royal family, perhaps kings and queens who ruled with influence and sanctity. The figures themselves are abstract yet carefully proportioned. Their niches are carved with attention to symmetry and alignment. They are monumental gestures cut into the living rock yet worn and softened by centuries of wind, rain, and moss. Mainstream archaeological interpretations focus on the shrine's function as memorials, emphasizing the royal and ritual significance of the site. The positioning along the river and the terraces may reflect a symbolic connection between life, death, and the flow of water. A sacred passage that guides the soul from the mortal world to the divine. Ritual offerings continue to this day with locals leaving flowers, incense, and prayers in accordance with Balan Hindu tradition. In this sense, Gunawi is both ancient and living, a bridge between past and present. Yet many elements of the site defy straightforward explanation. How were such enormous structures carved with such precision directly into solid rock without the technology we associate with later civilizations? No comprehensive records describe the construction methods, and yet the shrines have endured for nearly a millennium, maintaining a striking sense of proportion and alignment. Could the builders have used unknown techniques lost over time to shape the cliffs with this level of artistry? The purpose of the shrines also invites speculation beyond literary function. Some researchers note subtle alignments with celestial events, suggesting that the monuments may have been designed to capture light in perhaps particular ways during solstices or equinoxes. Could these alignments indicate an astronomical or cosmological significance? A deliberate integration of the heavens into the landscape of the dead? And if so, how extensive was this knowledge? And why does it appear so subtly integrated rather than overtly documented? There are also questions of symbolism and iconography. The shrine's niches are simple, yet their sheer scale, their proportional design, and their isolated positioning on cliffs evoke an almost otherworldly presence. Why carve some shrines deep into the rock face while leaving others exposed? Could this reflect hierarchical distinctions, spiritual beliefs, or something else entirely? Perhaps a system of visual storytelling or metaphysical mapping that is now lost to us. Some fringe interpretations explore even more enigmatic possibilities. A few theorists have proposed that the shrine's precise alignment with the cliffs and terraces might indicate advanced engineering knowledge or an understanding of seismic stability in a volcanic region. Others speculate that the abstract forms represent metaphysical concepts such as ancestral spirits, deities, or even energy pathways that tie the human realm to cosmic forces. While these ideas remain unproven, they underscore the depth of mystery the site continues to evoke. The environmental context of Guningkawi further deepens the intrigue. The shrines are carved into a cliff face formed from volcanic tuff, a material soft enough to sculpt but challenging to preserve over centuries in a humid tropical climate. How did the builders anticipate erosion, rainfall, and seismic activity to create monuments that remain so structurally sound today? What knowledge of geology, materials, or ritual necessity guided their decisions? As we contemplate Gunongkawi, it becomes clear that the site is more than an architectural achievement. It is a testament to the intersection of human devotion, artistry, and perhaps knowledge that exceeds our current understanding. The shrines invite reflection not only on the skill and ambition of their creators, but on the ways in which early Balinese society understood life-death and the eternal interplay between the earthly and the divine. Standing before the carved cliffs, listening to the river's flow, one cannot help but feel the weight of centuries and the lingering presence of those for whom this site was sacred. Gunui is both tangible and intangible. A monument of rock, yes, but also a monument of mystery, a question etched into the earth itself. And as we leave the terrace valley, descending from these monumental shrines back into the rhythms of the living world, we are left to wonder what other secrets, techniques, or beliefs are etched into the landscapes of our ancestors, waiting quietly for those patient enough to seek them out. Flowing from the cliffside mysteries of Gunongkawi, where rock and ritual intertwine, we now journey across oceans and continents to the arid messes of the American Southwest. Here, in a landscape carved by wind, sun, and centuries of human habitation, we encounter a civilization that left behind not monumental statues or carved cliffs, but something subtler, enigmatic, and deeply ritualistic. The Cas of Pueblo Bonito, whose variations continue to puzzle archaeologists and historians alike. Nestled within the winding canyons of Chaco Canyon in what is now northwestern New Mexico, Pueblo Bonito rises as a testament to the ingenuity and complexity of the ancestral Puebloans. From above, the settlement resembles a vast, irregular labyrinth of sandstone blocks, rising multiple stories in some sections. Its rooms are interconnected in intricate patterns. At its heart lie the Cas, circular subterranean chambers, many with sunken floors, ventilated hearths, and carefully constructed benches, all hinting at ceremonial and communal functions. Among the most intriguing aspects of Pueblo Bonito is the remarkable variety of car designs. While the classic subterranean circular form dominates, Some caves exhibit unusual dimensions, shapes or features, variations that challenge straightforward classification. Certain chambers are larger, more elaborate, or oriented in ways that defy the patterns observed elsewhere in the canyon. Some contain multiple hearths, others have niches, plasters, or unexpected alcoves carved into the walls. The craftsmanship is consistent, yet the deviations are deliberate, suggesting a nuanced understanding of ritual, architecture, and space. Archaeologists generally interpret caves as centers of spiritual, social, and political life. They were likely used for ceremonies, council meetings, initiation rituals, or astronomical observation. The sunken design, aligned with cardinal directions, hints at cosmological significance, connecting the community's daily existence with the cycles of the heavens. Yet these mainstream explanations, while compelling, do not account for the full diversity of cave forms at Pueblo Bonito. Why were some as markedly larger than others? Why do certain variants appear isolated or unusually deep while others cluster near living spaces? And what can the subtle differences in entrance design, ventilation, and wall construction tell us about the intentions of their builders? Some researchers suggest that cave variations may reflect hierarchical or social distinctions, with larger or more elaborately constructed chambers reserved for leaders, elite families, or specialized ritual practitioners. Others propose that the orientation and internal features corresponded to different ceremonial calendars, perhaps aligning with solstices, lunar cycles, or the movement of specific stars. Could these architectural deviations represent a sophisticated codification of time, belief, and social order embedded in stone long before written records? Yet as we examine the site more closely, additional mysteries emerge. Certain caves seem to defy practical explanation. Their entrances are unusually narrow, access routes convoluted, or internal features placed in ways that limit visibility or usability. Were these deliberate design choices meant to enhance secrecy, focus, ritual attention, or symbolize the journey from the mundane world into a sacred space? Could the builders have encoded complex spiritual narratives or metaphysical concepts into these subtle variations, leaving us only hints in stone and adobe? Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Some scholars have proposed that the larger, uniquely shaped KAS might have functioned as observatories designed to track celestial events with extraordinary precision. Others suggest that specific KA forms could have been associated with shamanistic practices, altered states of consciousness, or even early forms of ritual theatre. Spaces designed to manipulate acoustics, light, and movement to create transformative experiences. While direct evidence for these ideas is limited, the sheer architectural sophistication of Pueblo Bonito suggests that its creators possessed an intimate understanding of both physical space and symbolic meaning. The construction techniques themselves raise further questions. Each KA required precise masonry, careful levelling of floors, and often extensive subterranean excavation. All accomplished without metal tools or modern engineering knowledge. How did the builders achieve such uniformity and durability across multiple variants? And what motivated them to maintain such consistency in certain aspects, while simultaneously introducing subtle, unexplained deviations in others? The surrounding landscape adds another layer of enigma. Pueblo Bonito sits within a canyon that experiences dramatic seasonal changes, from searing summer heat to harsh winter cold. How did environmental factors influence the placement, depth, and construction of different cars? Were the unusual variants designed to optimize acoustics, thermal properties, or even airflow for ceremonial purposes? Or do they hold a symbolic relationship to the natural contours of the canyon, aligning human ritual with the rhythms of the land itself? As we stand or imagine standing within these stone chambers, it becomes clear that the cars are more than architectural curiosities. They are physical manifestations of belief, power, and community encoded in a language of space, form, and orientation that we are only beginning to decipher. They invite us to consider the ancestral plans not merely as builders, but as thinkers, planners, and ritualists, whose lives were inseparably intertwined with the cycles of the earth and sky. Pueblo Bonito's covariants endure as enigmas because they simultaneously reveal and conceal. They speak of ritual, hierarchy, and cosmology, yet leave vast questions unanswered. Why these variations? Why here and why now? How much of the knowledge embedded in stone has been lost to time? And what remains encoded in these subterranean chambers, waiting for careful study or serendipitous discovery to unlock their secrets. And as we move from the sunken circles of Choco Canyon back into the broader tapestry of human history, we are reminded once again some mysteries do not simply invite answers, they invite wonder, reflection, and the patient pursuit of understanding that spans generations. Flowing from the sunken enigmatic chambers of Pueblo Bonito, where stone and ritual preserve the whispers of an ancient people, we now travel across both time and space to a site of sudden catastrophe, a place where human knowledge, carefully recorded and treasured, was frozen in an instant of volcanic fury. Here, beneath the shadow of Mount Vuvius, we encounter the carbonized library scrolls of Herculaneum, artifacts that challenge our understanding of history, preservation, and the fragility of human endeavour. Herculaneum, a Roman town buried in 79 CE under pyrolastic flows and volcanic ash, presents a haunting tableau of sudden destruction. Unlike its more famous neighbour Pompeii, Herculaneum was enveloped not merely by falling pumice, but by superheated mud and ash, which charred and preserved structures, furniture, and even delicate objects in remarkable detail. Among these treasures lie the library scrolls discovered in a villa thought to belong to a wealthy elite family. These papyrus scrolls, carbonized by the intense heat of the eruption, remain among the few surviving remnants of ancient literary culture, capturing voices from the past that would have otherwise been lost to time. At first glance, the scrolls appear as brittle blackened cylinders, fragile, inscrutable, and almost indecipherable. Unrolling them risks destruction. Handling them demands extraordinary care, and for decades their contents were accessible only in fragments. Yet within these charred cylinders lies an astonishing breadth of human thought, philosophical treatises, poetic compositions, and perhaps texts that were never copied or circulated elsewhere. Here in the ashes of disaster lies a library frozen in time, a repository of knowledge both precious and tantalizingly incomplete. Mainstream archaeological and philological efforts have focused on preservation and recovery. Techniques using infrared imaging, digital tomography, and multispectral analysis now allow researchers to glimpse letters and words hidden within the carbonized layers. Some scrolls have been partially deciphered, revealing texts by known philosophers such as Phodemus, offering insight into Roman-era Epicurean thought and intellectual life. Yet despite these advances, the majority of the collection remains obscured, a testament to both the destructive force of Vuvius and the limitations of modern technology. The mysteries of the scrolls go beyond their fragility or the challenge of reading them. Scholars are confronted with questions about the scope and purpose of the library itself. Why was such a vast collection amassed in a single villa? Does it reflect private intellectual curiosity, a school of philosophy, or a broader cultural ambition now lost to history? And what might remain hidden within the unread scrolls? Texts that could reshape our understanding of Roman philosophy, science, or daily life. Some researchers speculate on the intentionality behind the library's composition. Were certain works selected for ideological reasons, perhaps to educate, influence, or preserve a particular philosophical lineage? Could the arrangement of scrolls, their placement on shelves, and even the careful construction of the library reveal insights into Roman attitudes toward knowledge, memory, and legacy? In a town obliterated in a matter of hours, the library stands as a quiet, enduring assertion of intellectual life, a symbol of human striving against the inevitability of time and nature. The carbonization of the scrolls itself raises further questions. How did the extreme heat preserve the papyri without reducing them entirely to ash? Did the chemical composition of the papyrus, the presence of ink, or the specific conditions of burial create a unique environment that allowed for this extraordinary preservation? And why have similar materials not survived elsewhere in comparable contexts, leaving Herculaneum as an almost singular repository of carbonized knowledge? Speculative interpretations extend even further. Some researchers suggest that undiscovered scrolls may contain texts unknown in any other source, lost histories, lost literature, or even works challenging our understanding of Roman science and philosophy. Could these fragments, if ever fully read, alter the narrative of intellectual history? Others have considered the philosophical resonance of the library's destruction itself. A civilization's accumulated knowledge reduced to blackened cylinders preserved yet unreadable, offering a meditation on impermanence, fragility, and the limits of human foresight. The scrolls also invite reflection on human ingenuity in both creation and recovery. Ancient scribes painstakingly inscribed their texts with stylus and ink, preserving ideas for future generations, while modern scientists and engineers labour to digitally reconstruct what centuries of ash and fire have rendered nearly invisible. Across millennia, human curiosity and devotion to knowledge converge in this extraordinary sight, a fragile dialogue between past and present. As we contemplate the vivious carbonized scrolls, one is struck by their dual nature, simultaneously a symbol of loss and of preservation, a silent testimony to intellectual achievement and a reminder of the vulnerability of human endeavours to forces beyond our control. Each scroll is a puzzle, each letter a whisper, a fragment of thought suspended in time. And as we leave the charred library of Herculaneum, we are left with a haunting question. How many voices, ideas, and insights from the ancient world remain locked away, unseen, waiting for the patient work of discovery to bring them back into the light? And what secrets of human thought might still be buried beneath layers of history, fire, and ash, flowing from the fragile carbonized knowledge of Herculaneum, where the intellectual legacy of an ancient civilization was both preserved and obscured by volcanic fury? We now turn to a land rich with mystery and artistry, West Africa, where a culture long predating much of recorded history produced remarkable terracotta sculptures whose meaning and production continue to puzzle archaeologists today. Here we encounter the notched terracotta production marks, enigmatic traces of craftsmanship that hint at a sophisticated society thriving over 2 millennia ago. In the undulating plateaus and savors of central Nigeria, the notch culture emerged as one of Africa's earliest known producers of terracotta sculptures, flourishing between roughly 1000 BCE and 300 CE. Excavations have revealed thousands of artifacts, human figures, animal representations, and abstract forms, all shaped from local clay and fired in open-air kilns. Among these creations, a subtle but compelling mystery persists. The production marks etched, stamped, or incised onto the bases and bodies of many terracotta pieces. At first glance, these marks may appear as simple decoration or incidental tool traces. Yet careful analysis reveals patterns, repetition, and a precision that suggests intentionality beyond mere ornamentation. The marks vary widely. Some resemble linear scratches, others are small indentations, dots, or grids. Occasionally, clusters of marks form symbolic shapes, though no consistent language or script has been identified. Mainstream archaeological interpretations propose practical purposes. They may have indicated the sculptor's identity, the kiln batch, or ownership of the finished piece. Some suggest they served as guides during production, helping artisans orient figures, attach appendages, or monitor firing results. Others propose that they functioned as quality control, marking successful or failed attempts in a process both laborious and delicate. Yet the marks defy simple explanation. Why do some figures carry dozens of marks while others appear untouched? Why do similar motifs recur in geographically distant sites, suggesting either widespread communication or shared conventions within the Nok culture? And why, despite extensive excavations, have researchers failed to decode any systematic pattern resembling a script or numerical system? Could these marks have conveyed information lost to time, messages, symbolic instructions, or perhaps ritual significance incomprehensible to modern observers? Some scholars speculate that the production marks may have had spiritual or ceremonial functions. In many ancient cultures, artisans imbued objects with meaning through subtle gestures, marks, incisions, or symbolic carvings that ensured protection, vitality, or social status. Could the Nok marks have served as protective sigils connecting the figures to ancestral spirits or the spiritual landscape? Might each mark have represented a blessing, a dedication, or an offering encoded in clay? Understood intuitively by the community but now opaque to us. Further intrigue emerges when considering the technical expertise required to create these terracottas. These sculptures are remarkably detailed, some approaching life-size with careful anatomical rendering and expressive features. Firing such large pieces without modern kilns or temperature control would have been a significant achievement, and the presence of repeated patterned marks hints at a codified methodology. Were these marks part of a complex production system, a set of instructions or protocols passed between master and apprentice over generations? And if so, why has the knowledge of their meaning vanished entirely, leaving only silent clay witnesses behind? geographical distribution deepens the mystery. Noctracotters are found across a broad region, sometimes hundreds of kilos apart, yet the production marks exhibit similar traits. Could this indicate cultural standardization, trade networks, or a shared artistic vocabulary? Or is it possible that the marks served as identifiers of specific workshops, guilds, or even patrons? If so, what social, economic, or ritual structures underpin this network? And why does the archaeological record provide so few clues? Speculative interpretations have considered more extraordinary possibilities. Some researchers suggest that the marks may encode numerical, or astronomical information, though no definitive evidence supports such claims. Others propose that they may have functioned as mnemonic devices, aiding in oral transmission of stories, genealogies, or mythologies. While these theories remain unproven, they underscore the depth of human ingenuity reflected in a seemingly simple clay figure, a sophistication that bridges artistry, technology, and cognition in ways still being deciphered. The marks also provoke reflection on human continuity and the fragility of knowledge. Each terracotta piece etched with patterns invisible without close inspection carries a message whose meaning was once clear but is now almost entirely lost. They are artifacts of communication across millennia, silent yet eloquent, demanding careful study and imagination to interpret. What did the artisans intend to convey? And what cultural memory have we lost in the intervening centuries? As we contemplate the no terracottas, we see a society deeply attuned to both material and symbolic worlds capable of remarkable artistic and technical achievement. The production marks, small and enigmatic, suggest an intelligence, intentionality, and tradition that challenge modern assumptions about prehistoric African societies. They remind us that even in contexts without written language, human beings found ways to encode identity, meaning instruction into the objects they create. And as we leave the terracotta workshops of ancient No, we are left with a profound question. How many stories, systems of knowledge, or cultural codes remain hidden in the material traces of the past, waiting for patient observation, careful interpretation, and perhaps a spark of insight to reveal what our ancestors intended to preserve for eternity? Flowing from the enigmatic terracotta marks of the Enoch culture, where subtle inscriptions hint at knowledge lost across millennia, we now journey across continents and epochs to the fertile plains of the Indus Valley. Here, amid the remains of one of the world's earliest urban civilizations, we encounter a form of communication as intricate as it is confounding. The Harappa seal miniature scripts, artifacts that continue to baffle scholars with their precision, purpose, and undeciphered language. In the sprawling ruins of Harappa, located in present-day Pakistan, archaeologists have unearthed a remarkable collection of small, intricately carved seals, usually fashioned from steatite or other soft stones, and often measuring just a few centimeters across. These seals are adorned with miniature scripts, tiny pictographs, and sometimes depictions of animals or ritual symbols. Despite their modest size, the precision of their carvings is extraordinary. Each character is carefully incised with attention to symmetry and proportion, demonstrating a mastery of both material and design that remains impressive even by modern standards. The scripts themselves, often arranged in neat horizontal rows or panels, remain undeciphered, defying every attempt at translation or linguistic reconstruction. Mainstream interpretations suggest that the seals may have served administrative or economic functions, possibly as markers of ownership, trade tokens, or identification stamps used in the bustling urban centres of the Indus Valley civilization, which flourished between 2600 and 1900 BCE. Evidence from excavations indicates that they were widely used, appearing in both domestic and commercial contexts and sometimes found in distant regions, implying a network of trade and communication that stretched far beyond Harappa itself. Yet the more one examines these miniature scripts, the more profound the mystery becomes. Why did the Harappans develop such a highly stylized uniform system that resisted easy interpretation? Some seals contain repeated sequences, but no bilingual texts have ever been discovered to provide a Rosetta Stone-like breakthrough. Could these markings represent a fully developed written language, or a complex system of symbolic notation designed for restricted or ritual use intelligible only to a select class of scribes, merchants, or priests? The imagery accompanying the scripts deepens the intrigue. Many seals depict animals, unicorn-like creatures, elephants, or bulls, often in stylized forms, sometimes interacting with human figures in enigmatic scenes. Were these purely symbolic, indicative of ownership, or did they carry religious or metaphysical significance? Some researchers propose that the combination of script and imagery might encode a sophisticated system of commerce, law, or spiritual belief. Others suggest that the pictographs might function as mnemonic devices, assisting in oral recitation of complex ideas, stories, or genealogies. The technical execution of the seals adds another layer of fascination. Carved from hard stone with remarkable precision, many show uniformity in character size and proportion that implies standardized training or instruction across workshops. Did the Harappans operate formal institutions to train seal carvers? Were these miniature scripts part of a bureaucratic system, a ritual tradition, or both? And if so, why has the knowledge of reading these symbols vanished entirely, leaving us with artifacts that are beautiful and precise, yet frustratingly opaque? Speculative interpretations stretch even further. Some theorists have suggested that the seals were used for esoteric or ritualistic purposes, encoding sacred knowledge or secret messages inaccessible to the general populace. Could they have functioned as talismans conveying protection, status, or spiritual authority? Alternatively, might they have represented a form of proto-cryptography designed to limit access to sensitive trade, legal or religious information? While these theories remain conjectural, they underscore the remarkable sophistication of the seals and their creators. The geographic distribution of the seals provides additional clues and questions. Similar seals have been found across the Indus Valley, from Mohenjo-daro to Gujarat, and even in Mesopotamian trading outposts. Does this indicate a shared cultural or economic system, or a standardized symbolic language used for trade and diplomacy? And if so, how did such a system develop and spread without leaving decipherable records or inscriptions that have survived to the present day? The Harappa challenge our assumptions about early urban civilizations. They are small, portable, and utilitarian, yet imbued with layers of meaning and precision that suggest intellectual and artistic sophistication. They reflect a society capable of coordination, standardization, and symbolic thought on a scale that modern observers can appreciate but not fully comprehend. Their undeciphered scripts are reminders that for all our advances in archaeology and linguistics, entire systems of knowledge can vanish, leaving only traces in clay and stone. As we contemplate these miniature scripts, one cannot help but marvel at the human intent captured in such tiny forms. Each seal represents careful planning, deliberate design, and a purpose now obscured. They are artifacts of communication, commerce, ritual, and perhaps even intellect. A glimpse of a world that thrived, innovated, and vanished, leaving us only tantalizing fragments. And as we leave the streets and workshops of Harappa, pondering the secrets etched into each seal, we are confronted with a question that lingers across millennia. How much of human knowledge, expression, and culture has been lost, preserved only in cryptic signs that we have yet to decipher? And what truths about our shared past await those patient enough to uncover them? Flowing from the intricate miniature scripts of Harappa, where human intellect and artistry converge in forms still undeciphered, we now travel northwest to the mist-laden plains of Ireland, where ancient stones rise from the landscape, silent yet powerful, bearing witness to rituals and knowledge that have endured for millennia. Here lies New Grange, a passage tomb whose design and alignment continue to inspire wonder, challenging our understanding of prehistoric engineering, astronomy, and ritual. Rising from the emerald fields of County Meath, New Grange presents itself as a low circular mound encircled by a ring of massive curbstones, each engraved with intricate spirals, lozens, and geometric patterns. At first glance, it may appear modest, yet the monument conceals a complex internal architecture, a long, narrow passage leading to a cruciform chamber at the heart of the mound. This chamber, constructed with enormous corbelled stones and precisely cut granite, has endured for over 5,000 years, maintaining structural integrity and a sense of sacred enclosure that is both awe-inspiring and enigmatic. Archaeologists date New Grange to around 3200 BCTE, making it older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza. Mainstream interpretations suggest it served as a burial site for elite individuals, perhaps chiefs or spiritual leaders, with ceremonial use extending beyond interment. Excavations have revealed cremated human remains and artifacts, but it is the monument's extraordinary astronomical alignment that sets it apart. During the winter solstice, a shaft of sunlight penetrates the narrow entrance, illuminating the chamber floor in a precise orchestrated display that lasts for only a few minutes. The exact engineering required to achieve this phenomenon implies not only architectural sophistication, but an intimate understanding of solar cycles and celestial mechanics. Yet this alignment raises profound questions. How did Neolithic builders without written records or sophisticated instruments achieve such precise orientation? Was the winter solstice merely symbolic, a marker of seasonal change, or did it play a deeper role in ritual, agricultural planning, or cosmology? Some scholars propose that the Newgrange served as a calendar of sorts, aligning human activity with the rhythms of the natural world. Others suggest that the solstice illumination had spiritual significance, perhaps representing rebirth, renewal, or the cyclical journey of the soul. The curbstones and internal carvings add further layers of mystery. The swirling motifs and abstract forms etched into stone do not correspond to any known writing system. Could they represent symbolic language, ancestral stories, or encoded knowledge? And why were such motifs repeated across multiple stones, yet never accompanied by decipherable text? The deliberate placement of these symbols invites speculation. Were they protective, ceremonial, or mnemonic, aiding in the transmission of cultural memory across generations? Beyond the astronomical and symbolic features, the construction of Newgrange itself is staggering. The mound consists of an estimated 200,000 tons of earth carefully layered and compacted, while the passage stones and corbelled roof required transporting massive rocks, some weighing several tons over considerable distances. How did a Neolithic community relying on simple tools and human labour alone organise and execute such a project? Was it a communal effort spanning multiple generations guided by spiritual or social leadership whose knowledge has been lost to time? Speculative theories extend the mystery even further. Some researchers have proposed that Newgrange may have functioned as a ritual centre for initiation, a place where knowledge, spiritual insight, or social rank was conferred through ceremonies timed to the solstice light. Others suggest that the mound may encode astronomical or mathematical principles beyond our current understanding, hinting at a Neolithic awareness of geometry and celestial mechanics that challenges assumptions about prehistoric cognition. Even fringe interpretations ponder whether the monument's design could have been used for acoustic, sensory, or psychospiritual experiences, enhancing rituals through echo, light, or confined space. The surrounding landscape reinforces the monument's significance. Newgrange is part of the Brunner Boon complex alongside the other passage tombs and ceremonial sites, suggesting that the region functioned as a major centre of prehistoric activity. Yet, the intentional placement of Newgrange relative to these neighbouring mounds remains a puzzle. Did the builders plan a network of interconnected sacred sites aligned for ritual, social, or astronomical purposes? Or do the relationships between these monuments reflect social hierarchies, territorial claims, or shared cosmology we can only glimpse from a distance? As we stand, or imagine standing inside the long passage awaiting the solstice light, it becomes clear that Newgrange is more than a tomb. It is a dialogue across millennia, a testament to human ingenuity, observation, and spiritual expression. Each stone, each carving, each precisely oriented passage speaks of intention, care, and a desire to connect the earthly with the celestial, the living with the ancestors. Newgrange challenges our understanding of Neolithic Europe, not through what it contains alone, but through what it conceals, knowledge, rituals and meanings encoded in stone that may never be fully deciphered. It is a reminder that even the oldest structures can continue to speak if only we listen carefully with patience and imagination. And as we leave the misty plains of the Boon Valley, moving from stone chamber to sunlit landscape, we are left with an enduring question. What other insights into the minds, beliefs, and ingenuity of our distant ancestors remain hidden in the earth, waiting for those willing to seek, observe, and wonder? Flowing from the sunlit passageways of Newgrange, where prehistoric builders aligned stone and light in ways that continue to captivate us, we now journey across the Asian Sea to the rugged, wind-swept island of Corfu, where the remnants of a small yet enigmatic sanctuary challenge our understanding of Greek architecture and ancient ritual. This is the Kardaki Temple, a site whose simplicity conceals layers of unanswered questions about purpose, design, and the culture that built it. Perched on a gentle slope overlooking the Ionian waters, the Kardaki Temple is unlike the grandiose temples of mainland Greece. Its footprint is modest, its stones weathered by centuries of wind and sea spray. yet there is a quiet elegance in its proportions and layout. Constructed in the late Archaic period around the 6th century BCE, the temple defies easy categorization. Unlike other Doric temples of its era, Kardaki lacks a promise or front porch, and the apostle columns surrounding the cells are incomplete with irregular spacing that has perplexed architects and historians alike. From a distance it appears unfinished, yet every stone carefully cut and positioned suggests deliberate intent rather than hasty construction. Mainstream interpretations propose that Kardaki functioned as a sanctuary dedicated to one or more deities, perhaps local or regional gods whose cults have left little record. Excavations have revealed foundation stones, column drums, and fragments of terracotta roofing, but no inscriptions or dedications to confirm which deity was honoured here. Its isolated location, away from urban centres, yet commanding a view of the surrounding coastline, hints at a ritual significance that may have extended beyond the purely civic or political. Could this have been a site of pilgrimage, a space for seasonal festivals, or a place where the rhythms of the sea and sky guided ceremonies? Yet many features of Kardaki resist straightforward explanation. The irregular column spacing and lack of standard Doric proportions suggest that the builders were experimenting with architectural forms, or perhaps responding to constraints imposed by the terrain or prior structures. Was this a deliberate stylistic choice, a reflection of local innovation, or evidence of a transitional phase in temple design that has otherwise disappeared from the archaeological record? And why was the temple never expanded or completed in the manner typical of its contemporaries? The construction techniques themselves are noteworthy. Massive limestone blocks carefully fitted without mortar form both the foundation and the remaining column bases. The columns partially preserved reveal careful attention to fluting and proportion. Yet the deviations from canonical Doric rules suggest a nuanced understanding of geometry and aesthetics. Did the architects of Kardaki seek to reconcile rigid architectural norms with local topography, ritual requirements, or symbolic meaning? Or might the unusual layout encode an as yet unrecognized cosmological or religious principle, visible only to the initiates of the sanctuary? Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Some researchers have proposed that the temple's irregular plan reflects esoteric or symbolic functions, perhaps designed for processional rituals, sacred observances, or initiations. Others suggest that Kardaki may have functioned as an experimental site testing architectural innovations that influenced later classical temples. Could its unusual form have been intended to align with natural features, celestial events, or even acoustic phenomena, enhancing chants, prayers, or musical rituals within the sanctuary? While definitive evidence is lacking, the possibilities hint at a sophisticated understanding of the interaction between space, ritual, and perception. The temple's location also invites contemplation. Positioned on Corfu's western coast, it overlooks both land and sea, suggesting a relationship with navigation, trade, or maritime observation. Did the sanctuary serve as a beacon or marker for travellers, integrating human activity with natural geography in a ritualized landscape? Or was its placement purely symbolic, a testament to the relationship between the divine, the earthly, and the horizon where sky meets sea? The answers remain elusive, shrouded in both the fog of history and the absence of written records. Kardaki Temple challenges assumptions about the uniformity of Greek temple construction. Its deviations, whether intentional or pragmatic, demonstrate that even in an era often associated with strict architectural norms, experimentation, adaptation, and localized expression were possible. Each stone column and deviation carries a silent message, a reflection of human creativity, devotion, and the complexities of cultural transmission. The temple is both ordinary and extraordinary, modest in scale, yet profound in the questions it poses. Standing among the ruins, one is struck by the interplay of simplicity and enigma. The sun casts long shadows across the remaining stones, and the wind carries the distant sound of waves against the coast, evoking a sense of timelessness and contemplation. Kardaki does not overwhelm with grandeur. Instead, it draws the observer into a reflective engagement, inviting consideration of ancient human intention, artistry, and belief. And as we leave the weathered stones of Kardaki, tracing paths once walked by priests, artisans, or worshippers, we are left to ponder a lingering question. What knowledge, ritual, or meaning did this temple hold that we can no longer fully perceive? And how many other sites, simple yet deliberate, hide secrets that only the patient observer can hope to glimpse? Flowing from the windswept stones of Kardidaki, where Greek ingenuity met ritual and landscape in quiet dialogue, we now journey to the heart of the Balkans, to a region of rolling hills and verdant valleys, where natural formations meet human imagination in a debate that has endured for decades. Here lies a site whose claims have ignited controversy, fascination, and wonder. The Bosnian pyramids near the town of Visoko, a place where the line between geology and archaeology blurs, and questions persist about the origins, purpose, and meaning of these monumental structures. Rising from the gentle hills of central Bosnia, the largest of these formations, known as Visica Hill, or the so-called Pyramid of the Sun, commands the landscape with a remarkably geometric profile. From certain angles, the hill appears to taper sharply to a pointed summit, with sides that to the eye suggest a deliberate triangular symmetry. Surrounding it are other hills with similar contours referred to as the Pyramid of the Moon, the Pyramid of the Dragon, and smaller structures forming a network of shapes that some claim constitutes a prehistoric complex of monumental significance. Mainstream geologists have long maintained that these are natural hills shaped by tectonic processes, erosion, and sedimentation over millennia. Yet the proponents of the Bosnian pyramid theory argue otherwise. They point to the sharply angled slopes, apparent alignment with cardinal dorotes wounds, and layers of large stone blocks that seem arranged rather than randomly deposited. Excavations have uncovered paved terraces, tunnels, and stone blocks with unusual geometry, leading to claims that these formations were sculpted by an advanced prehistoric civilization, perhaps even one unknown to conventional history. The controversy itself deepens the mystery. If these hills are indeed natural, why do they display such apparent regularity? If human-made, who could have built them, and for what purpose? Some researchers propose that the structures served as ceremonial centres or astronomical observatories designed to align with solstices, equinoxes, or other celestial phenomena. Others speculate on energy-related functions, claiming that the site radiates measurable electromagnetic anomalies. Though such findings remain unverified and contentious, could it be that the builders, if indeed they existed, possessed knowledge lost to history, blending architecture, astronomy, and ritual in ways that challenge our assumptions about ancient Europe? Even the tunnels beneath the hills add layers of intrigue. Excavations have revealed passages lined with stone, some stretching for hundreds of meters. Proponents suggest these may have been part of a subterranean network connecting the pyramids, while skeptics argue they are natural karstic formations modified over time by human activity. What is clear is that these tunnels contain ceramic fragments, unusual sediment layers, and signs of human intervention, hinting at activity that may extend back thousands of years. Were these tunnels used for ritual, storage, or shelter? Or do they represent a later adaptation of natural features by local populations? The scale of the Bosnian pyramids, if proven artificial, would be unprecedented in Europe. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt, these structures are partially buried, overgrown, and eroded, complicating efforts to assess their dimensions or construction techniques. Yet measurements suggest that the Pyramid of the Sun may rival or even exceed the height of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Could such an ambitious undertaking have been achieved by a civilization whose traces have otherwise vanished? And if so, what knowledge, resources, and social organization would have been required to shape stone on this scale without leaving records or inscriptions for us to find? Speculative interpretations further intensify the debate. Some suggest the site functioned as a center for spiritual or energetic practices, perhaps designed to harness earth currents or create a symbolic landscape reflecting cosmological principles. Others propose a more practical purpose, that the terraces and tunnels were agricultural or defensive structures, later misinterpreted as paramil monuments. Each theory, while unproven, highlights the tension between observation and interpretation, between what is seen and what is believed, and between science and speculation. The surrounding landscape reinforces the sense of enigma. The hills of Visoko are part of a broader network of natural features, rivers, valleys, and forests that may have influenced settlement, ritual, and local mythology. Could the placement of the pyramidal formations have been intentional, designed to integrate human activity with the natural contours of the land, or does the apparent symmetry arise purely from the mind's pattern-seeking tendencies, projecting order onto the randomness of geological processes? As one stands at top Visacia Hill, gazing across the green valleys and distant peaks, The question of intention versus coincidence lingers. The site is at once ordinary, rolling hills, trees and streams, and extraordinary, prompting reflection on the human propensity to create meaning from form, and on the possibility that our ancestors left behind monuments whose stories remain partially hidden beneath layers of soil and sediment. The Bosnian pyramids challenge our understanding of history, geology and human imagination. Whether they are natural formations, human-made structures, or a combination of both, the site encourages a careful, patient inquiry blending empirical investigation with openness to mystery. It reminds us that landscapes carry traces of both Earth's processes and human activity, and that interpretation is often as much about perspective as it is about evidence. And as we descend from the slopes of Visacia, leaving behind the shadowed terraces and enigmatic tunnels, we are left with a lingering question: what truths lie hidden in these hills waiting to be uncovered? And how much of human ingenuity, lost, forgotten or buried, remains quietly encoded in the landscapes we think we know? We flow from the rolling hills and enigmatic terraces of the Bosnian pyramids, where natural formations and human imagination intersect. We now cross the Mediterranean to the windswept island of Goo, part of Malta's archipelago, where some of the oldest megalithic structures in the world rise quietly from the limestone plains. Here, amidst the imposing stones of Gantia Temple, we encounter another enduring mystery: the delicate yet compelling figurines left behind by a civilization that flourished thousands of years ago. Their meaning and purpose still elusive, Gantia, dating back to between 3600 and 300 BCE, stands as a testament to human ingenuity long before the classical civilizations of Europe emerged. Its massive upright stones, some weighing over 50 tons, form a double temple complex with carefully arranged altars, passageways and ceremonial spaces. But alongside these monumental structures, archaeologists have uncovered a smaller, more intimate form of expression. Terracotta and stone figurines, often referred to as fat ladies due to their rounded forms, accentuated hips and pronounced torsos. These figurines, sometimes only a few centimetres tall, contrast sharply with the towering megaliths, offering a window into the symbolic and ritual life of the temple's builders. The figurines are enigmatic in both design and context. Carved with exaggerated female features, many appear to emphasize fertility, maternity, or abundance. Some hold their arms across their chests, while others rest them on swollen bellies, suggesting a deliberate focus on reproduction, nourishment, or protective power. Mainstream interpretations propose that they were fertility icons, perhaps used in ritual ceremonies to ensure the prosperity of crops, livestock, or human populations. Yet even this straightforward explanation leaves questions unanswered. Why were some figurines highly stylized while others are more naturalistic? Why were they placed in niches beneath altars or among the temple's foundations rather than in domestic contexts? The context of Gantia itself adds to the mystery. The temples are among the oldest freestanding stone structures in the world, predating the pyramids of Egypt by centuries. The skill required to quarry, transport, and erect these massive stones is extraordinary. Yet the figurines, small, intimate, and meticulously crafted, coexist alongside these monumental achievements. What motivated a society capable of moving colossal megaliths to invest such care in diminutive objects? Could the figurines have represented a tangible bridge between human life and the spiritual or cosmic forces the temples were designed to honor? Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Some researchers suggest that the figurines were not merely fertility symbols, but ritual intermediaries acting as conduits between worshippers and unseen powers. Others propose that they may have been used in initiatory ceremonies, teaching tools, or even symbolic tokens exchanged within a ritual economy of devotion. Could these small objects in their intimate scale have carried more significance than the towering stones themselves, offering a tactile human connection to abstract concepts of life, death, and regeneration? The stylistic choices of the figurines remain puzzling. The exaggerated forms, particularly the emphasis on hips, thighs, and abdomen, suggest a highly codified symbolic language, yet no written record exists to explain it. Why did this culture prioritize certain physical features while minimizing others? Was the emphasis purely symbolic, meant to represent fertility and abundance? Or did it convey a more complex worldview, one that integrated notions of health, lineage, and divine favor? The absence of contemporary explanatory texts leaves only the objects themselves to tell the story, a story that is tantalizingly incomplete. The distribution and discovery of the figurines also provoke reflection. Many were found in use within the temple, yet others appear to have been deliberately buried or hidden. Were they offerings, votive deposits, or protective charms? And if so, to whom or what were they dedicated? The diversity of form, size, and placement suggests a variety of functions, both practical and symbolic, that may have evolved over centuries of temple use. Beyond their symbolic meaning, the figurines offer insights into the technical skill and material knowledge of the temple builders. Crafted from local clay or soft stone, many show careful modelling, smoothing, and firing techniques that preserve their forms over millennia. Even in miniature, these objects demonstrate an advanced understanding of materials, a careful hand, and an aesthetic sensibility that parallels the monumental architecture surrounding them. Could it be that in these tiny figures, the artisans expressed a level of sophistication as profound as the construction of the temple itself? Standing among the Ganta stones, one senses the interplay between scale and intention. The massive megaliths command awe through size and permanence, while the figurines engage the observer through intimacy and symbolism. Together they create a layered experience of sacred space, one that honours the celestial, the monumental, and the human in a single cohesive environment. And as we leave the limestone terraces of Gantia, holding in our imagination the small rounded figurines once touched by Neolithic hands, we are left with a lingering question. What deeper meanings, beliefs, or rituals did these figures embody? And how much of the human experience they represent remains hidden, waiting for us to decipher the silent messages left behind in clay and stone, flowing from the intimate figurines of Ganta, where Neolithic artisans conveyed meaning through small, deliberate forms. We now venture far to the remote reaches of the Bayan Karula Mountains along the rugged borderlands of China and Tibet. Here, hidden in a high-altitude plateau, lie artifacts whose origin, purpose, and very existence have ignited debate for decades. The mysterious dropstones, these enigmatic discs etched with concentric grooves and cryptic markings, challenge conventional archaeology and invite speculation that stretches from the historical to the extraordinary. The story begins in 1938, when a team of Chinese archaeologists and explorers led by Chiput was surveying cave sites in the remote valleys of the Bayan Karula range. Among the layers of sediment and rock, they discovered a series of stone discs, each roughly 30 centimeters in diameter, thin and carved with spiral grooves radiating from the central hole. At first glance, the discs resembled primitive tools or musical instruments, yet upon closer examination the intricate grooves appeared far too deliberate to be accidental, and small hieroglyphic markings along the spiral suggested symbolic or communicative intent. Dating the stones has proven difficult. Some analyses place them at 12,000 years old or more, far older than the surrounding cave habitation layers. The discs are composed of a stone not to the immediate area, implying transport or trade over considerable distance, or perhaps a deliberate selection of material for its specific properties. Their precise function remains unknown. Were they ritual objects, astronomical instruments, or repositories of information encoded in stone? And why, in such a remote region, would humans, if humans indeed made them, create objects of such complexity and care? One of the most compelling aspects of the dropstones is the claim that the spiral grooves contain microglyphs or writing, small repetitive markings following the path of the spiral. Allegedly, some researchers attempted to decode these symbols, reporting that they told a story of ancient beings who descended from the sky, seeking refuge in the caves and interacting with early humans. These interpretations, while controversial and heavily disputed, suggest the discs may have functioned as a form of recording, perhaps oral tradition encoded in stone, preserved for generations. If true, the implications are staggering, raising questions about prehistory, lost knowledge, and contact with unknown peoples. Mainstream archaeology, however, remains skeptical. Critics argue that the discs may be a misinterpretation of naturally occurring striations or ritualistic pottery fragments, and that the alleged inscriptions are either coincidental or a result of modern tampering. Scientific verification has been challenging, partly because many of the discs were reportedly removed or lost during expeditions, and documentation from the 1930s is incomplete or anecdotal. Yet even if some claims are exaggerated, the sheer existence of the discs, carefully shaped, uniform, and bearing spiral motifs, demands careful scrutiny. Could these patterns be symbolic? Or were they purely decorative, misread as writing by observers searching for meaning? Speculative interpretations have stretched across decades, fueled by both the discs themselves and the mysterious context of their discovery. Some theorists propose that the dropper stones are astronomical devices encoding the movements of stars, planets, or comets, serving as calendars or observational tools for an unknown civilization. Others suggest they were educational or ritual tools designed to teach, commemorate, or communicate across generations in a society with oral traditions rather than written language. Still more extraordinary claims posit that the discs represent evidence of prehistoric contact with extraterrestrial visitors, noting the spiral form as a symbol reminiscent of galaxies, wormholes, or flight patterns, an idea that stretches beyond archaeology into the realm of speculation and myth. The remote high-altitude location of the discs only adds to their allure. The Bayan Kala Mountains are harsh, windswept, and difficult to access, with caves that retain extreme temperatures, frost, and isolation throughout the year. Could a person capable of creating the drop of stones have flourished in such a challenging environment? And if so, why are there no other traces of their settlements, tools, or domestic life nearby? Or do these stones represent the last surviving fragment of a culture that existed on the margins of recorded history, leaving behind only these cryptic messages carved in stone? Another layer of mystery lies in the physical characteristics of the discs themselves. The grooves are unnervingly precise, following spiral paths that require careful measurement and dexterity to produce. Some researchers have suggested that these may be mechanically inspired, implying the use of tools or techniques advanced for their purported age. Could the discs have been rotational instruments designed to spin or interact with light, sound, or magnetism? If so, what purpose would such a function serve? And what knowledge of physics or engineering did their creators possess? Despite decades of discussion, the drop of stones remains tantalizingly enigmatic. They occupy a space between artifact and legend at the intersection of archaeology, folklore, and the human desire to connect with the unknown. Each disc with its spiral and markings carries the potential for a story lost to time, messages encoded in stone that hint at contact, innovation, or ritual, yet remain frustratingly indecipherable. In a sense, the stones are mirrors reflecting our own curiosity, skepticism, and fascination with the possibilities of human history beyond the conventional narrative. As we contemplate the drop of stones, one cannot help but be drawn into their isolation and precision. Their spiral grooves, delicate inscriptions, and careful craftsmanship speak of intention, skill, and perhaps urgency. They suggest a civilization or group aware of larger patterns, social, celestial, or even cosmological, encoded into objects small enough to be hidden, preserved, or carried. What drove their creators to leave such messages? Was it a warning, a record, a ritual, or an attempt at immortality through symbols? And as we leave the shadowed caves of the Bayan Karula Mountains, imagining the hands that carved each disc and the stories they may have encoded, we are left with a profound question. How much knowledge, experience, or contact lies hidden in the unexamined artifacts of our world, waiting for the patient observer to uncover it? And what truths, if any, might the dropper stones reveal if we could finally read the message encoded in their ancient spirals flowing from the spiraling grooves and enigmatic inscriptions of the dropper stones? Where the line between history and legend blurs, we now return to the well-documented expanse of the Roman world where another mystery awaits. One not hidden in remote mountains or buried in caves, but cast in bronze and scattered across the landscapes of ancient Europe. These are the Roman dodecahedra, small hollow 12-sided objects whose purpose has baffled historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts for most centuries. The dodecahedra are striking in their precision and design. Each face is a pentagon and every vertex is capped with a protruding knob. The objects vary in size from a mere few centimeters to over 20 and are typically made from bronze, though some examples are iron. Most have circular holes of varying diameters cut into each face, lending them an air of deliberate functionality. They have been discovered across the Roman Empire from Gaul to Pannonia, Britain, and even the far reaches of present-day Germany. Despite the wide geographic spread, they share consistent features: geometric symmetry, careful craftsmanship, and the puzzling absence of inscriptions or contextual clues about their use. Archaeological records date the objects predominantly to the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE, a period of Roman prosperity and technological experimentation. Yet beyond their age and construction, little is certain. Unlike coins, pottery or weapons, docahedra appear almost exclusively in isolation. They are rarely found in domestic contexts or temples, leaving little evidence of their cultural or practical significance. This absence of context deepens the intrigue. Were they functional instruments, symbolic artifacts, or objects whose purpose has been deliberately lost to time? Scholars have proposed numerous theories. Some suggest that the docahedra were measuring devices possibly for surveying land, casting shadows, or calibrating distances. The varying hole sizes could support the theory that they served as astronomical instruments, allowing light or shadow to pass through in precise ways. Others propose more practical explanations that they were candle holders designed to diffuse light evenly or knitting tools used to create intricate patterns in textiles. While intriguing, none of these explanations has been definitively proven, and the variety in size and hole diameter across known examples complicates any universal application. The widespread distribution of the docahedra across the Roman Empire raises further questions. If they served a practical function, why are examples not more abundant in urban centres or workshop contexts? Were they tools of a specialised profession restricted to certain regions or social classes? Could they have been ceremonial or symbolic? Perhaps objects imbued with mystical or cultic significance carried by elites, or used in ritual practices. The absence of written records referencing their use leaves these questions unanswered, inviting speculation and careful interpretation. One particularly fascinating aspect of the docahedra is their geometric sophistication. The consistent angles, uniform pentagonal faces, and precise arrangement of holes suggest a deliberate understanding of symmetry, proportion, and spatial relationships. Could the makers have intended these objects as pedagogical tools, demonstrating principles of mathematics or geometry to students or apprentices? Or were they crafted with an aesthetic or ritualistic sensibility, combining mathematical precision with symbolic meaning? The line between utility and symbolism remains elusive. Speculative interpretations, while controversial, further ignite curiosity. Some theorists propose that the docahedra were astrological devices possibly used to determine favourable dates, align with lunar or solar cycles, or guide agricultural or religious practices. Others suggest they may have functioned as divinatory objects, their knobs and holes corresponding to chance operations, casting patterns, or sacred numerology. Could these small portable artifacts have encoded knowledge that was once widely understood but has since been lost? Despite centuries of study, the docahedra retain their silent authority. When held, their weight, smooth bronze surfaces, and intricate geometry convey a sense of precision and purpose. One cannot help but imagine the hands that crafted them, skilled artisans working in Roman workshops, aware of both the mathematical principles and the cultural expectations surrounding their production. The objects seem too deliberate, too consistent, and too finely made to have been purely decorative, yet their exact function remains tantalizingly out of reach. The context of discovery adds to the enigma. Many docahedra have been unearthed in rural or isolated sites, sometimes near roads, riverbanks, or burial mounds, yet rarely in urban centres where tools and instruments are typically preserved. Were they carried by travellers, used by soldiers, or buried as offerings? Did their creators intend them to be temporary, ceremonial, or secretive, leaving no written record by design? Each new find fuels further debate, suggesting that the objects may have served multiple purposes across regions, evolving over time in functional meaning. Even today, experimental archaeology has attempted to reconstruct their use. Scholars and enthusiasts have tried spinning the docahedra, measuring shadows cast through their holes, and employing them in weaving. Yet no single approach has replicated a universally accepted function. This reinforces the mystery. The objects exist at the intersection of precision, ingenuity, and ambiguity, artifacts that challenge the assumption that every Roman object had a clear and documented purpose. Holding a dodecahedron, one senses the intersection of human skill, curiosity, and intentionality. Its symmetrical faces, the tactile protrusions, and the carefully measured holes suggest a culture capable of abstraction, mathematics, and intricate craftsmanship. And yet, the absence of explanatory records leaves the artifact suspended between past and present, functional and symbolic, understood and unknowable. And as we place the dodecahedron back among the soil and stones from which it was excavated, one is left with a lingering question that transcends time. What knowledge, practice, or belief did these objects embody? And how many other artifacts, carefully crafted and deliberately preserved, still guard their secrets, waiting for the patient observer to decode their silent geometric language, flowing from the precise geometry and enduring enigma of the Roman dodecahedra, where craftsmanship meets the unknown? We now travel to the sun-baked plains of Upper Egypt, to the ancient city of Abydos, a place where millennia of royal devotion and artistic expression converge upon stone. Here, among the worn hieroglyphic reliefs and sacred inscriptions of a temple dedicated to Pharaoh Seti, we encounter a puzzle that has intrigued both scholars and enthusiasts alike. The so-called helicopter carvings, an assemblage of overlapping images that appear to depict shapes strikingly reminiscent of modern aircraft. The reliefs themselves are carved into the stone walls of the Temple of Setaid, a monumental structure built in the 13th century BCE. Intricate hieroglyphs tell stories of kingship, divine authority, and ceremonial rites rendered with meticulous attention to detail. Yet on one particular section of the temple, observers have noted shapes that at first glance seem incongruous with the surrounding iconography. One image appears to show a form with a long fuselage-like body and protrusions resembling rotor blades, while others suggest elements akin to modern submarines or planes. The effect is heightened by the way the carvings overlap, creating the impression of multiple superimposed images, a visual palmist frozen in stone. Archaeologists explain this phenomenon through the lens of successive restorations and plaster recasting. Over centuries, temples underwent maintenance. Hieroglyphic panels were often recarved or patched, sometimes using fresh plaster over older inscriptions. When the newer inscriptions hardened and the plaster eroded, the overlapping shapes of old and new carvings created accidental composites. To the casual observer, these composites can resemble objects from the modern era: aircraft, helicopters, and submarines. But in reality, they are the product of layered human craftsmanship and the passage of time. Yet even within this conventional explanation, questions arise. Why did the particular placement of these carvings allow for such precise illusions of modern forms? Is it purely coincidence that the overlaps suggest rotor blades or aerodynamic contours? Or is there a deeper symbolic principle at work in the original reliefs? Could the ancient artisan have intentionally encoded multiple layers of meaning, with one set of symbols visible at one time and another emerging as materials eroded or were replaced? The possibility of deliberate complexity in Egyptian art is supported by centuries of evidence showing that hieroglyphs often carried multiple semantic, religious, and phonetic functions simultaneously. The context of Abydos itself adds layers to the mystery. This site was a major cult center for Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and its temples were designed not only as places of worship but also as records of history, lineage, and divine authority. Pharaoh first commissioned elaborate inscriptions to assert his legitimacy, connect with divine forces, and preserve memory across generations. In this environment, could visual overlaps or composite images have been employed intentionally as a form of coded communication, conveying messages visible only under certain lighting, angles, or conditions? Or is the resemblance to modern technology an accident of human pattern recognition, a projection of contemporary imagination onto ancient imagery? The phenomenon also raises intriguing questions about perception and interpretation. The so-called helicopter carvings were first widely publicized in the 90s, coinciding with a surge of interest in anomalous archaeology and ancient technology. Photographs of the reliefs circulated rapidly, capturing imaginations worldwide and fueling speculation that ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge far ahead of their time. Could the images be evidence of ancient technological understanding? Or do they instead reflect the brain's tendency to identify familiar forms, airplanes, helicopters, and other machines in patterns that were never intended to represent such things? The cognitive interplay between observer and artifact becomes part of the story itself, suggesting that mystery is sometimes created as much by human perception as by material reality. Experimental archaeology and digital imaging have added further nuance. By photographing the reliefs under various lighting conditions and applying computer analysis to the overlapping plaster layers, researchers have demonstrated that the apparent modern shapes dissolve into recognizable hieroglyphic sequences. Symbols representing standard Egyptian concepts, boats, chariots, and architectural motifs emerge when the erosion and overlap are accounted for, showing the deliberate craftsmanship of the original artisans. Yet even knowing this, the visual resonance remains compelling. There is an almost magnetic fascination in seeing forms that resonate with contemporary machinery, reminding us how easily the mind draws connections across time and experience. Speculative interpretations persist, not only in popular media, but in ongoing discussions among archaeologists interested in symbolic or ritual dimensions. Some suggest that the overlapping carvings may have functioned as a visual metaphor for the layering of time, a representation of the eternal cycles of life, death, and divine kingship. Others ponder whether such reliefs could encode astronomical or metaphysical knowledge hidden in plain sight for those trained to read them. While these hypotheses remain unproven, they underscore the capacity of ancient Egyptian arts to blend practical, symbolic, and aesthetic considerations into a unified visual language. The broader significance of Abydos and its reliefs is compelling. Here the temple walls preserve not only the political and spiritual narratives of Pharaoh Seti, but also the human fascination with permanence and memory. Every line carved into stone carries centuries of intention. Yet time, restoration, and erosion continually reshape its appearance, creating illusions, ambiguities, and interpretive openings. In this sense, the helicopter-like carvings are not just curiosities, they are emblematic of the dynamic interplay between human craftsmanship, environmental processes, and the observer's imagination. As we consider the Abydos reliefs, one is drawn to the tension between certainty and mystery. On one hand, the scientific and archaeological explanation, overlapping inscription, plaster recasts, and erosion, is compelling and consistent with known Egyptian practices. On the other, the images themselves, when viewed without context, evoke wonder, curiosity, and speculation about ancient knowledge, technology, and vision. They are, in a sense, mirrors reflecting both the skill of the artisans and the questions that modern observers bring to the past. And as we step back from the sun-bleached walls of Seti's temple, tracing the layered carvings and contemplating the shapes that seem at once ancient and modern, we are left with a lingering, almost poetic question: what other forms, messages, or intentions might lie hidden in the interplay of stone, plaster, and time, waiting for those willing to look closely, to question carefully, and to wonder at the enduring capacity of human imagination across millennia. Flowing from the layered hieroglyphs of Abydos, where time and restoration have created images that seem to bridge ancient and modern worlds, we now turn to another Egyptian enigma, carved in the walls of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. Here, among the intricate reliefs of a temple completed in the late Tiamat period, a series of depictions has captivated observers for decades. The so-called Dendera light reliefs, images that seem to portray objects resembling modern electrical devices, their meaning elusive and the interpretations diverse. The reliefs are located in the temple's crypt-like rooms and chapels where light filters softly through small windows, casting shifting shadows across the stone surfaces. At first glance, the reliefs appear to depict familiar Egyptian motifs, gods, serpents, lotus flowers, and other symbolic forms that populate the iconography of iconic temples. Yet, upon closer inspection, one can discern elongated ovoid forms held by figures, emitting coiled serpent-like lines that extend toward other shapes. The imagery has led some observers to liken them to light bulbs, filaments, and electrical cables, and to speculate that ancient Egyptians may have understood principles of electricity in ways that challenge conventional archaeology. Mainstream Egyptology explains the reliefs within the framework of religious symbolism and mythological storytelling. The elongated ovoid objects are usually interpreted as representations of the Djed pillar, a symbol of stability, or of the lotus, which in Egyptian myth embodies creation, life, and rebirth. The serpent, often coiled or looping, represents divine energy, transformation, or the life force of the gods. In this interpretation, what modern eyes perceive as technological artifacts are in fact complex visual metaphors for spiritual concepts encoded within a sacred artistic language that communicates cosmology and divine power. Yet the intrigue persists because the shapes in the reliefs do not merely resemble abstract symbols, they evoke tangible technological forms, suggesting a functionality that seems almost mechanical. Could it be that the ancient artist deliberately incorporated multiple layers of meaning, blending spiritual symbolism with practical knowledge? Or is this resemblance simply the mind's projection of contemporary experience onto ancient art? The reliefs occupy a liminal space where religious, cultural, and perhaps scientific imagination intersect, leaving observers with an enduring sense of wonder. The context of the Dendera temple complex reinforces this tension. Built over centuries and completed in the 1st century BCE, the temple was dedicated to Hathor, goddess of joy, music, and fertility, but it also served as a centre for ritual, astronomy, and priestly knowledge. The crypts and ceiling reliefs are thought to have encoded numerical, celestial, and logistical information, suggesting that the Egyptian architects and artisans were capable of embedding sophisticated concepts in visual form. Could these light depictions have been a symbolic representation of celestial energy, divine illumination, or life-giving power translated into forms that resonate with the human imagination as technological? Speculative interpretations, while not universally accepted, have explored other possibilities. Some suggest that the reliefs document ancient experiments with electricity or energy generation, perhaps using materials like mercury or other conductive elements known in antiquity. Others propose that they depict ritual tools or devices whose form and operation have been lost to history. While direct evidence for electricity in ancient Egypt is lacking, the precision of the carvings, the coiled serpentine shapes, and the apparent connections between the figures and the objects encourage reflection on the limits of our knowledge, reminding us that absence of evidence is not always evidence of absence. The interplay of light and the shadow within the temple amplifies the mystery. As the sun shifts through the day, beams entering the chambers accentuate certain carvings, illuminating ovoid forms and coiled lines with a dramatic, almost theatrical effect. Did the ancient priests intend this dynamic, using natural light to animate symbolic forms in a way that communicated divine energy or ritual potency? Or is the effect coincidental, a fortuitous interaction between architecture and artistry that modern observers interpret through the lens of technological analogy? The reliefs also invite contemplation of human perception and interpretation. Like the helicopter images at Abydos, the Dendera reliefs highlight how the observer's cultural context shapes the reading of ancient artifacts. What looks like a modern machine to one viewer may be a powerful symbol of divine life to another. The carvings operate on multiple levels, simultaneously literal, symbolic, and metaphorical, demonstrating the capacity of ancient art to communicate layered meanings across centuries. Experimental archaeology and digital imaging have allowed scholars to study the reliefs in unprecedented detail, revealing the techniques, tools, and artistic conventions employed by the TMIC artisans. The coiled lines, for instance, show consistent width, depth, and spacing, indicating deliberate design rather than random decoration. The figures holding the ovoid shapes are carefully proportioned, their gestures codified in accordance with ritual and myth. Whether these details are symbolic, practical, or both remains open to interpretation, leaving ample space for curiosity and reflection. Standing before the Dendera reliefs today, one senses the fusion of art, ritual, and imagination. The carvings speak not only of ancient Egyptian cosmology, but also of the human impulse to encode knowledge, belief, and meaning in durable, enduring form. Each line, curve, and spiral invites careful observation and contemplation, bridging the gap between antiquity and the modern observer's mind. The carvings are both tangible artifacts and gateways to a larger dialogue about what ancient civilizations knew, imagined, and chose to record. And as we trace the curves of the ovoid forms, the coiled serpents, and the figures that hold them, we are left with a lingering question. What knowledge, wisdom, or symbolic understanding was intended by the creators of Dendera? And how much of it remains hidden beneath the layers of time, waiting for those willing to observe, wonder, and consider the full depth of human creativity across millennia? The cascade block is modest in size, roughly the dimensions of a large hardcover book, yet its surface commands attention. Made from serpentine, a dark green stone smoothed by careful craftsmanship, the block bears an intricate array of symbols, some geometric, others evocative of plants, animals, or abstract forms, arranged in a seemingly deliberate order. Each glyph carved with a precision suggesting purpose and intent is distinct. Yet collectively they form a dense continuous pattern that hints at a structured communication system. The artifact was uncovered in 1999 at the site of Loma del Zapote, a Nemic settlement known for monumental heads, altars, and ceremonial complexes dating to around 900 BCE. The discovery of the block was monumental. Until that time, Thebes were widely regarded as a civilization without writing, leaving behind impressive art, colossal heads, and ceremonial artifacts, but no known script. The Cascadal block, however, seemed to rewrite that narrative, suggesting that this early Mesoamerican culture may have developed a form of symbolic communication contemporaneous with or even predating other early scripts in the Americas. The glyphs themselves are unlike anything previously seen. Some resemble plant forms, others abstract geometric shapes, and still others suggest human or animal motifs. Yet no two symbols are repeated in a simple sequence, hinting at a complex system capable of conveying nuanced meaning. Mainstream interpretations cautiously approach the block as proto-porting, a stage in the evolutions of written communication, where symbols encode ideas, objects, or sounds, but not yet a full language in the conventional sense. Scholars compare it to early Sumerian or Egyptian glyphs, noting that proto-porting often combines pictorial representation with abstract symbolic rules. The consistency of carving style, spacing, and alignment on the cascade block suggests deliberate planning rather than mere decoration or random etching. Could this have been a record-keeping tool, a ceremonial object, or a medium for codifying myth or ritual? Yet many questions remain unanswered. Unlike Egyptian or Mesopotamian writing, there are no known accompanying inscriptions or texts to provide context. No Nomesh cortices or extended sequences have survived, leaving the cascade block as a solitary witness to a potentially lost literary tradition. How was it used and by whom? Was it a temple artifact, a tool for teaching, or a symbolic representation of mythological or kendrical knowledge? The absence of context intensifies its mystery, inviting interpretation as much by imagination as by empirical study. Speculative theories have emerged, fueled by the uniqueness and isolation of the artifact. Some suggest that the symbols may encode astronomical knowledge reflecting cycles of the sun, moon, or stars, a possibility consistent with the much interest in celestial alignment in their ceremonial centres. Others propose that the glyphs could represent a proto-miracle system recording trade, tribute or agricultural yields, or even a complex spiritual or ritual lexicon where each symbol carries layers of meaning, intelligible only to initiated priests or rulers. The possibility that this single block preserves a fragment of a broader but now lost system underscores the fragility and impermanence of human knowledge. The materiality of the block itself deepens the intrigue. Serpentine is a hard, durable stone difficult to carve with precision, using the tools available in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. The craftsmanship required to produce the uniform symbols, each carefully incised with deep relief, implies not only technical skill, but also intention, training, and cultural importance. Each stroke seems deliberate, suggesting that the block was more than decorative. It carried meaning, perhaps even authority. Could it have been a standard or record meant to endure across generations, or a ceremonial object that encoded sacred knowledge, now tantalizingly beyond our reach? The placement of the block within the mech site provides additional context. Found amidst layers of ceremonial debris, ritual platforms, and other carved objects, it appears to have been deposited intentionally, possibly as a votive or commemorative item. Its solitary nature, however, leaves us with a sense of incompleteness. If themes possessed proto-porting, where are the other examples? Were records made on perishable materials such as wood, bark, or textiles that have long since decayed? The silence of the archaeological record reinforces the mystery, reminding us that much of human history may be invisible, lost to time, yet occasionally glimpsed through the fragments that survive. Beyond the technical and historical considerations, the Cascadal block speaks to human ingenuity and the universality of symbolic communication. It challenges assumptions about the origins of literacy in the Americas and invites reflection on the cognitive and cultural capabilities of the meme civilization. The block embodies an intersection of art, knowledge, and ritual, illustrating how even small isolated artifacts can offer profound insights into human creativity and intellectual ambition. And as we study the carved symbols, tracing their curves and lines with careful attention, we are left with an open question that transcends geography and time. What stories, histories, or knowledge did themes intend to preserve in the cascadal block? And how much of their understanding encoded in these enduring glyphs remains hidden, waiting for the patient observer to decode the messages left behind in stone? Flowing from the intricate glyphs of the cascadal block, where ancient Mesoamerican knowledge hints at a lost system of writing, we now journey across deserts and millennia to the heart of the Sahara, to a place where stones speak silently under a vast unbroken sky. This is Nabda, a prehistoric ceremonial site in southern Egypt where stone arrangements, carefully placed, enigmatic and enduring, invite questions about astronomy, ritual, and human ingenuity at the dawn of African civilization. Nabda Playa is not a single monument but a landscape dotted with stones, their placement deliberate, stretching across a dry basin that was once a lush, water-rich environment. From the air, the arrangements appear as subtle patterns etched into the earth, concentric circles, oval enclosures, and radial alignments that stretch toward the horizon. At ground level, the stones, ranging from fist-sized pebbles to towering monoliths, exude a quiet presence. Each is carefully selected, positioned, and in some cases shaped to occupy a precise spatial relationship with its neighbours. It is this combination of scale, intentionality, and orientation that gives the site an aura of mystery. Archaeologists date the primary stone alignments to circa 5000 to 4000 BCE, predating the Egyptian dynasties and placing them in the context of nomadic pastoral communities who inhabited the Sahara when it was a fertile savanna. These early communities left behind not only domestic artifacts, ceramics, tools, and hearths, but also monuments whose size and complexity suggest that they were intended for purposes beyond the mundane. The stone arrangements at Nabta are among the earliest known examples of ceremonial architecture in Africa, a testament to sophisticated social organisation and the ability to coordinate labour and knowledge across space and time. Mainstream interpretations have focused on the astronomical alignments of the stones. Some arrangements correspond with solstices, equinoxes, and the positions of key stars, implying that the early Saharan peoples were keen observers of celestial cycles. One of the most discussed features is a circle of large stones that appears to mark the summer solstice sunrise, allowing its observers to track seasonal changes with remarkable accuracy. These observations could have had practical implications for pastoralism, timing, grazing, water availability, or ceremonial events, but they also reflect a profound awareness of the cosmos and the human place within it. Yet despite decades of study, significant questions remain unanswered. The sheer scale of some arrangements combined with the precision of their alignment has led researchers to ponder, how did nomadic or semi-nomadic communities of this period coordinate such efforts? What knowledge or tools allowed them to measure angles, track the sun, and construct durable, spatially coherent layouts? And perhaps most intriguingly, why do certain alignments appear to transcend practicality, evoking patterns that suggest symbolic or ritual significance beyond the observable cycles of nature? Speculative interpretations have emerged, exploring ideas that extend into the realm of mystery. Some propose that Nabta Playa represents one of the earliest proto-observatories where spiritual and practical knowledge intersected in the service of social cohesion and cosmological understanding. Others suggest that the alignments may encode mythical or metaphysical knowledge, translating observations of the sky into terrestrial monuments that connect the human, natural, and divine worlds. Could the radial arrangements reflect early notions of sacred geometry, mapping not only the stars but also human experience onto a cosmic framework? The physical characteristics of the stones themselves add to the intrigue. Many are not native to the immediate area, suggesting deliberate transport over considerable distances. Some exhibit shaping or smoothing that indicates care and intentionality beyond mere piling or random placement. Could these stones have been selected not only for their size and weight, but also for symbolic properties, colour, texture, or resonance? And if so, what criteria guided these choices? And how much of their significance was meant to be observed by the living versus communicated to ancestors or deities? The cultural context of Nabtoplia further deepens the mystery. The site predates monumental Egyptian architecture, yet it demonstrates organisational and conceptual sophistication comparable to early urban centres. Its creators were pastoralists reliant on seasonal resources, yet they invested time, labour, and knowledge into monuments whose primary purpose may have been ceremonial, astronomical, or symbolic. How did these communities conceptualize space, time, and ritual? And what social or spiritual structures supported such large-scale projects? The alignments suggest an awareness of patterns, both celestial and terrestrial, yet their full meaning remains obscured by the passage of millennia. Beyond astronomy, some researchers have explored the possibility that the site functioned as a ceremonial centre for ritual gatherings, uniting clans or tribes in shared cultural practices. the concentric stone circles, often punctuated with offerings of clay, bones, or other artifacts, imply purposeful congregation and ritual activity. These gatherings may have reinforced social cohesion, transmitted knowledge and mediated relationships between humans and the forces of nature they observed in the sky. In this sense, Nab Tapla is not merely a passive observatory. It is a living landscape designed to be inhabited, observed and experienced. The mystery of Nab Tapla is amplified by its isolation and the vast desert that now surrounds it. The site, once watered and fertile, now lies beneath a harsh, arid sky. Stones endure where life once flourished, a silent testament to human ingenuity and observation. Standing among them, one senses both the passage of time and the continuity of human curiosity, the desire to measure, align and commemorate the cycles of existence. These stones, carefully arranged yet mute, invite us to contemplate what knowledge was held, what meanings were encoded, and what stories remain hidden beneath layers of sand and memory. And as we trace the radial alignments, the concentric circles and the silent monoliths of Napa, we are left with an enduring question. What inspired these early observers of the sky to transform the desert landscape into a reflection of cosmic order? And how much of their knowledge, ritual practice, or understanding of the universe remains encoded in the stones, waiting to be interpreted by those willing to look closely and wonder at the ingenuity of our distant ancestors? Nestled high in the rugged mesas and deep canyons of the American Southwest, the remnants of cliff dwellings cling stubbornly to sun-baked sandstone walls. Their skeletal frames, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, hold the echoes of a civilization that once thrived in what is now Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. Here at sites like Choco Canyon, Mesa Verde, and Bandelier, the Anasazi or ancestral Puebloans crafted homes, temples and ceremonial caves with a precision and artistry that still astonishes archaeologists today. Each stone, carefully shaped and stacked, seems to whisper stories of daily life, of families gathering around hearths, children playing on narrow ledges, and priests performing sacred rites beneath the open sky. And yet, despite the richness of their architectural legacy, there is one profound mystery that shadows these ancient ruins: the sudden disappearance of the Anasazi, leaving behind only their homes, their pottery, and cryptic clues etched into the landscape. Archaeologists estimate that the Anasazi culture flourished from around 200 to 300 CE, reaching remarkable heights in agriculture, astronomy, and social organization. They carved intricate irrigation systems to channel scarce water across arid mesas and cultivated fields of corn, beans, and squash in a fragile desert ecosystem. Their archaes, circular subterranean ceremonial spaces, align with the movements of the sun and moon, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of celestial patterns. Yet as abruptly as their society reached its peak, they vanished from the largest settlements in the 13th century. Theories abound, but none offer a complete explanation. Mainstream historians point to environmental factors as the most likely culprits. Dendrochronology, the study of tree rings, reveals evidence of prolonged droughts between 1130 and 1290 CE, during which rainfall in the Four Corners region plummeted to historic lows. Crops failed, reservoirs dried, and food shortages would have placed immense strain on communities that depended on precise agricultural cycles. In such a scenario, the Anasazi may have been forced to migrate, seeking more hospitable lands in southern valleys. There is archaeological evidence of smaller, more dispersed settlements appearing further south during this period, suggesting a gradual migration rather than a violent or sudden end. Yet, as logical as this explanation seems, it does not account for everything. Many cliff dwellings were abandoned despite being situated near reliable water sources. Some structures, perfectly preserved and still stocked with food stores, were left intact as though their inhabitants had planned to return. Why abandon such well-established homes if survival alone was at stake? Complicating matters further, human remains discovered in certain sites show no clear signs of widespread violence or epidemic. It is as though a people simply disappeared, leaving behind the trappings of daily life as silent witnesses to an unresolved story. Adding to the intrigue are the enigmatic artifacts and geoglyphs scattered across the region. Petroglyphs carved into canyon walls depict strange symbols, spirals, concentric circles, and what some interpret as star maps. Could these markings be more than artistic expression, Some researchers suggest they may contain encoded knowledge, perhaps maps of migration routes or celestial warnings, their meanings lost to time. Even more puzzling are small figurines and ceremonial objects that seem out of place. Intricately carved items resembling creatures or people not found in the local environment, hinting at far-reaching trade networks or encounters that are not yet fully understood. Speculative theories, though unproven, also capture the imagination. Some propose that social unrest and interclan conflict could have prompted a mass exodus, a voluntary dispersal to avoid warfare or internal strife. Others point to the possibility of an unknown catastrophe, perhaps a sudden climatic shift, flood or earthquake that forced Anastasia to flee overnight. Fringe theorists even consider astronomical or cosmic explanations, comet impacts, solar flares, or other phenomena that might have disrupted agriculture, signalling the end of an era. While these ideas remain outside mainstream scholarship, they underscore the enduring sense of mystery that surrounds the Anastasia disappearance. One of the most compelling aspects of this enigma lies in what is left behind. Walk through the abandoned corridors of a cliff dwelling, and the air seems thick with absence. The silence is almost tactile. Doorways open onto sheer drops. Storage rooms contain remnants of pottery still dusted with the desert's ochre and ceremonial cares, sit undisturbed beneath the open sky. These spaces, once bustling with life, now stand as mausoleums of memory, inviting us to imagine the rhythms of daily existence that have long since faded. How did they perceive the looming crisis? Did they foresee the need to abandon their hopes? Or was the decision sudden and unavoidable? And most hauntingly, where did they go? Some clues lie in the descendants of the Anasazi. Modern PBLO peoples, including the Hopi, Zuri, and various groups in New Mexico and Arizona, trace their lineage back to these ancestral communities. Oral histories passed down through generations speak of migrations prompted by spiritual visions or divine instructions. These accounts, often disregarded by early archaeologists in favour of strictly empirical evidence, provide a cultural context that complements and sometimes contradicts the material record. Perhaps the story of Anastasia is not merely one of environmental collapse or human error, but of spiritual journeys that left tangible traces in stone, but invisible footprints across the desert. Yet for all that is known, questions persist. Why did some settlements survive longer than others? Why were certain sacred sites left untouched while others were dismantled or abandoned? And how did a civilization capable of such architectural and astronomical sophistication vanish with so few traces of its people? Even modern technology, drones mapping cliff faces, ground-penetrating radar scanning beneath layers of soil, an isotopic analysis revealing dietary patterns has only deepened the mystery. Each discovery seems to open new questions rather than providing closure. Walking among the ruins today, it is impossible not to feel a profound sense of wonder and unease. The wind whistles through empty cars, carrying with it a sense of stories half told. Shadows stretch across stone walls, creating shapes that resemble the figures of those who once lived there. One cannot help but ask, did the Anasazi leave willingly, guided by intuition, knowledge, or visions we can scarcely comprehend? Or were they forced to abandon everything in response to circumstances beyond their control? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, or in aspects we have yet to uncover. The mystery of the Anastasia disappearance lingers in the canyons, etched into stone and sand. Resisting definitive explanation, it is a riddle of survival, ingenuity, and sudden absence, a testament to both the brilliance and fragility of human civilization. As archaeologists sift through layers of dust, researchers pore over maps and petroglyphs, and descendants recount their oral histories. The question remains, what really happened to Anastasia? Was their vanishing an inevitability dictated by nature? A calculated migration guided by wisdom? Or something stranger still, an event beyond our current understanding? The silence of the cliffs holds its secrets tightly, inviting us to wonder, to explore, and to imagine what mysteries might yet be waiting to emerge from the shadows of the desert. A pale morning mist drifts across the rolling fields of Brittany, northern France, softening the green of the pastures, and casting a delicate veil over hundreds of standing stones. Rising from the earth like silent sentinels, these monoliths stretch in precise, seemingly endless lines, their grey surfaces pocked with lichen and etched by the passage of millennia. The Karnak stones, as they are collectively known, present one of the most enigmatic archaeological landscapes in the world. Stretching over 4 kilometres in some areas, the rows of megaliths numbering in the thousands have stood steadfast since the Neolithic period, roughly between 4500 and 3300 BCE. And yet, despite centuries of study, the purpose of this monumental installation remains shrouded in mystery, as elusive as the mist curling through the fields. Each stone is unique. Some are slender and tall, jutting upward like fingers pointing to the sky. Others are squat and weathered, worn smooth by wind, rain, and human touch. Many are arranged in long parallel alignments, forming straight avenues that seem to converge toward invisible destinations, while others cluster into circles or tumulus-like formations reminiscent of graves. Archaeologists have measured, catalogued, and mapped them meticulously, yet the reason these stones were placed with such precision continues to elude consensus. Were they markers of sacred sites, memorials to the dead, or observatories aligned with celestial events? Or did they serve purposes now entirely lost to time and memory? Mainstream research offers some plausible explanations. The Neolithic communities who erected the Karnak stones were part of a broader cultural movement across Europe, a time when agriculture, social organisation, and ritual practices were rapidly evolving. Some scholars proposed that the alignment served as astronomical calendars, tracking the solstices, equinoxes, or movements of the moon. Indeed, certain stones appear to align with the rising sun at the winter solstice, hinting at an intimate knowledge of the heavens. Other researchers suggest the stones marked sacred processional paths used for rituals related to fertility, death, or communal identity. Excavations in nearby burial mounds and enclosures revealed traces of ritual activity, including offerings of pottery, tools, and even human remains, lending weight to the theory that these megaliths had deeply spiritual significance. Yet despite these insights, the Karnak stones resist complete explanation. Unlike Stonehenge, whose circular arrangement suggests a singular ceremonial focus, Karnak's vast arrays stretch across the landscape in a bewildering variety of patterns and directions. Why build so many stones in such precise lines over such an expanse? Why did successive generations continue the practice for centuries, adding new rows while leaving others untouched? The effort required to quarry, transport, and erect these massive stones, some weighing several tons, speaks of a society with extraordinary organisation and dedication. Yet we know little of the social or political structures that could have supported such monumental labour. Adding to the intrigue are the occasional carvings found on select stones. Abstract symbols, spirals, and anthropomorphic figures hint at a symbolic language. Yet their meaning is frustratingly opaque. Could they be markers of clan identity, territorial boundaries, or coded messages intended only for the initiated? Some of the engravings bear resemblance to motifs found in distant parts of Europe, suggesting a cultural dialogue that spanned hundreds of kilos. Yet no written record survived to confirm this. The stones themselves, silent and enduring, offer clues that tease without answering, like riddles etched into the landscape. Speculative theories have emerged to fill the gaps left by conventional archaeology. Some researchers proposed that the stones may have been constructed as a form of prehistoric energy grid channels for forces or vibrations imperceptible to human senses. Others suggest that their precise alignment and repetition reflect advanced knowledge of geometry and astronomy, possibly even exceeding what would be expected from a society considered primitive by modern standards. Fringe ideas extend further. Some have imagined the stones as markers of ancient extraterrestrial activity, or as remnants of a lost civilization whose knowledge has vanished without trace. While such theories remain outside mainstream acceptance, they speak to the almost hypnotic allure of Karnak, a place where imagination struggles to keep pace with observation. One of the most remarkable aspects of Karnak is the sense of scale and endurance. Walking among the stones today, it is easy to feel dwarfed by both the landscape and the ambition of those who constructed it. The stones are arranged with an exactitude that suggests purpose and vision, yet they exist in a terrain that has itself changed over thousands of years. Forests have receded, fields have been cultivated, and rivers have shifted course, and yet the alignments endure, suggesting that the original builders had an enduring vision, one that transcended their immediate needs and left a mark meant to communicate across millennia. The environment itself seems complicit in the mystery. Mist and fog lend the stones an ethereal quality, making it difficult to gauge their arrangement at first glance. From ground level, the lines appear random or chaotic. From a higher vantage point, patterns emerge and one is struck by the subtlety and precision of the design. How did Neolithic builders conceptualize such large-scale constructions without the benefit of modern surveying tools? Did they rely on astronomical observation, rudimentary geometry, or intuition honed by years of ritual practice? And if the stones were intended to mark cosmic events or spiritual journeys, how much of that knowledge has been irretrievably lost? Even the sheer continuity of construction adds another layer to the enigma. Radiocarbon dating suggests that the alignments were built in stages over centuries, perhaps as much as 1,000 years. Generations of people separated by time and circumstance contributed to the same vision. Did the purpose evolve with each generation? Or was there a singular cultural or religious imperative that persisted across centuries? And what inspired such dedication to a monumental task repeated over lifetimes with no record of a written explanation? The stones are in essence a dialogue with the future, one in which the authors never had the chance to clarify their intentions. Some scholars also point to the surrounding landscape for context. The stones sit amid fertile plains near rivers and streams, yet the nearest significant settlements are timbered and modest in comparison to the labour invested in the megaliths. Were the alignments intended for local communities? Or were they designed for something larger, perhaps to be viewed from a distance or even from the air? An idea almost inconceivable for the Neolithic mind. Could the stones themselves have served as a map, a spiritual framework, or a tool for observation, connecting earth and sky in ways we can only begin to imagine? As evening falls over Karak, the light softens and shadows stretch across the megaliths, creating patterns that shift with the setting sun. The stones appear to come alive in this dim light as if they are aware of the questions we carry to them. We can measure, catalogue, and theorize. Yet the stones keep their secrets with stoic silence. For every hypothesis grounded in archaeology, there are countless unknowns, moments when logic falters and the mystery reasserts itself. It is in this interplay between knowledge and uncertainty that the true power of Karnak is felt. The stones challenge assumptions about what ancient societies could achieve, invite reflection on the human impulse to create enduring monuments, and remind us of the ephemeral nature of memory and purpose. Were these stones a testament to faith, a record of celestial events, or something else entirely? And perhaps the most compelling question of all, if thousands of stones could be arranged in such deliberate patterns, what other insights or knowledge might we have lost to time, buried in plain sight, yet remaining undeciphered? Standing among the alignments, it becomes clear that the Karnak stones are more than a collection of ancient rocks. They are a dialogue across time. They speak of ambition, ritual, and vision. Yet their message remains tantalizingly out of reach. And in that silence there is a profound invitation to observe, to wonder, and to imagine what still lies hidden in the minds and hands of the Neolithic builders who laboured here so long ago. As the mist curls and drifts once more across the fields, one cannot help but feel that the mystery endures, waiting for the day when the stones may finally reveal the full measure of their story. In the heart of the Laotianian landscape, hidden beneath a canopy of mist and nestled in the remote hills of Shangquang, lies an ancient enigmatic site known as the Plain of Jars. Imagine standing there surrounded by the stillness of the land where the wind barely stirs the grass and the air hums with a sense of forgotten history. Scattered across this vast plateau are hundreds of enormous stone jars, some weighing several tons, seemingly abandoned to the whims of time. Their purpose, their origin, and even the meaning of their existence remain shrouded in mystery. The jars, often arranged in clusters or solitary rows, are carved from local sandstone or granite, and their sizes vary dramatically from ones barely large enough to fit a child to those that could comfortably house a full-grown adult. Despite their imposing presence, little is known about their creators. The Plain of Jars has become a symbol of one of the most perplexing archaeological puzzles in Southeast Asia. A site that challenges our understanding of ancient cultures and leaves behind more questions than answers. Historians and archaeologists have long debated the age of the Plain of Jars. Radiocarbon dating suggests that some of the jars date back at least 2,000 years, though the full scope of their creation might span even further back into prehistory. The jars themselves are massive, ranging from 1 to 3 meters in height, with some scattered over an area that spans over 1,000 kilograms. Yet for all their monumental scale, the site itself was largely unknown to the modern world until the 1930s, when a French researcher, Méline Kalani, began to investigate the site. Her work revealed not only the scale of the site, but the complexity of its design. Kalani was convinced the jars were connected to some form of ancient ritual, likely linked to burial practices. However, her theories, though widely accepted at the time, did little to explain the full scope of the mystery. In fact, much of the early exploration of the site was halted by political upheaval and the devastation of the Indochina War, which left the region isolated for many years. The site, covered by dense vegetation and unexploded ordnance, remained largely unexplored for decades until more recent investigations began to shed light on its deeper, more mysterious aspects. The most widely accepted theory about the Plain of Jars is that they were used as burial urns. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of human remains, ceramics, and other funeral items in and around some of the jars, suggesting they were once part of a burial ritual. The idea that these massive jars were used to house the remains of the dead, perhaps as part of an elaborate funeral practice, seems plausible. But the intricacies of this practice remain unclear. What has confounded researchers, however, is the absence of definitive evidence linking the jars to specific burial customs. The jars themselves are far too large to be the work of a single person or even a few individuals, which raises the question, how could a society without advanced technology such as cranes or other heavy lifting equipment have moved such enormous objects across such a vast area? The very construction and transportation of these jars pose a challenge to our understanding of ancient societies' capabilities, and yet there they are, silent, immovable, and enduring through centuries of uncertainty. Moreover, the location of the jars adds another layer to the mystery. The jars are scattered across a series of different plateaus, each with its own unique arrangement. Some are located in clusters, while others stand alone on hillsides or in valleys facing the direction of the sun or the moon. The deliberate placement of these stones raises the possibility that they were not just a burial site, but something far more ceremonial, perhaps tied to astronomy, religion, or a cultural belief system now lost to time. A particularly dark chapter in the history of the Plain of Jars was written in the 1960s and 70s during the so-called Secret War in Laos, as the US military conducted covert bombing campaigns to disrupt North Vietnamese forces using the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The region around Shenquang was heavily bombarded. Some of the bomb craters still scar the landscape, and unexploded ordnance remains a constant threat in the area to this day. The relentless bombing, which left the land littered with unexploded bombs, also disrupted what was left of the site's ancient mystery. While many locals fled or were displaced, the legacy of the bombs seems to have worked alongside the more natural forces of time in erasing the stories of those who once created the Plain of Jars. It is in this historical context that the significance of the site begins to take on a more somber tone. What had once been a site of cultural and religious importance may have been intentionally buried beneath layers of conflict, both literal and figurative. What if the destruction wrought by war had not only shattered the physical remnants of an ancient civilization, but also obscured knowledge that could have shed light on the true purpose of the Plain of Jars? The uncertainty surrounding the site is compounded by the lack of written records to explain its existence. Unlike other ancient cultures such as the Egyptians, Greeks, or Mesopotamians, there is no surviving record from the people who created the Plain of Jars. No inscriptions, no documented legends, and no myths have been uncovered to explain why the jars exist or what their true purpose was. This absence only heightens the sense of mystery surrounding the site. As modern-day researchers continue to explore the Plain of Jars, more questions arise than answers. The area is slowly being cleared of unexploded ordnance, allowing scientists and archaeologists to carefully excavate the site. However, many challenges remain. There are still vast sections of the plain that have yet to be explored, and the jars themselves may hold clues that have not yet been uncovered. Each jar, each stone, each fragment found in the surrounding soil offers new insights into a civilization that has left almost no trace of its existence beyond this silent stone landscape. Ultimately, the Plain of Jars remains an enigma, an archaeological mystery that calls to us across time. Was it a site of religious significance, a burial ground, an ancient power station, or something entirely different? And what knowledge, what history, what human experience has been lost to the sands of time? The answers may lie just beyond our reach, hidden within the stone, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Perhaps one day the full story of the Plain of Jars will emerge, shedding light on a forgotten chapter of human history. Until then, the mystery remains, silent, waiting, and ever more compelling. Amid the vast, unforgiving deserts of northern Chile, nestled along the banks of the desolate Azapa Valley, lies a mystery that has puzzled archaeologists and anthropologists for decades. Here, in a place where the land seems to speak only in the language of silence, the remains of the Chinuro culture have emerged from the earth, mummified bodies that stretch the limits of human understanding. These ancient people who thrived over 7,000 years ago have left behind evidence of a practice that is as extraordinary as it is unsettling. The Chinuro, a pre-agricultural society that lived by the coast, are not only known for their remarkable fishing techniques, but also for their startlingly advanced approach to death and preservation. In fact, they are believed to be the first people on Earth to intentionally mummify their dead, an achievement that predates the ancient Egyptians by more than 2,000 years. But it is not the mere act of mummification that raises eyebrows. It is the intricacy, the skill, and above all the peculiar rituals associated with it that defy easy explanation. Unlike other ancient cultures who would bury their dead in simple graves, the Chinchurro went to extraordinary lengths to preserve the bodies of their loved ones. They removed the internal organs, carefully prepared the skin, and in some cases even reconstructed the bodies with clay and other materials to create lifelike facsimiles. The result is a collection of mummies so detailed and carefully crafted that they almost seem to watch the observer from their resting places with eyes painted on and faces shaped with astonishing precision. Yet, as intricate as these preservation techniques were, they are still just the tip of the iceberg. For the Chinuro, death was not merely an end, it was part of a continuing cycle. The mummies were often displayed in the family home, where they were treated as though they were still very much alive. Was this a form of ancestral worship, or did the Chinuro believe that death was a transient state with the deceased continuing to play an active role in the lives of the living? The unanswered questions only multiply as the investigation deepens. Some mummies appear to have been prepared as early as 550 BCE, and the techniques used to preserve the dead evolved over centuries, becoming increasingly sophisticated. But why was there a particular belief, a cosmology that drove these practices? Or could the mummification of the dead have been linked to environmental pressures as the Chinchurro faced severe droughts, changes in food sources, and the challenges of survival in one of the harshest climates on Earth? Some researchers have suggested that the Chinchurro may have had a specific need to preserve the dead as part of a broader survival strategy, perhaps to cope with high infant mortality or disease. Others believe that the elaborate mummification process might have been driven by a more spiritual or metaphysical drive, a desire to maintain a connection with the departed, to honour them as eternal members of the community. But even this is speculative. No written records remain to tell us what the Chinuro truly believed. There are even darker theories suggesting that the mummification was not merely a ritual for the elderly or revered leaders, but also for the children, perhaps in response to the loss of young lives, as though preserving their bodies could somehow stave off the ravages of nature. Were these mummified children seen as protectors, as intermediaries between the living and the spirit world? The question lingers in the air unanswered. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Chinuro culture is not just the mystery of their mummies, but the profound silence that surrounds them. No grand temples, no sprawling cities, no monumental structures like those of other ancient cultures. The Chinuro seem to have lived quietly, with little trace of the grandeur that often accompanies civilizations of their time. Their mastery over death, however, remains a testament to a people whose understanding of life and death may have been far deeper than we can ever truly comprehend. And so the mummies of the Chinuro lie, as they have for millennia, in their quiet resting places, silent yet speaking to us across the ages. What secrets do they still hold? What could they reveal about a civilization whose practices were so advanced yet so enigmatic? As we continue to peel back the layers of history, we may find that the answer to the Chinuro mystery is not just buried in the desert sands, but hidden in the very bones of the past.